Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's monthly compendium for the month of November 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1915, written by Nor 15. 2 girls, 1 ride, and names that hide. About 2.5 years ago, when I, 19 female, was 17, I had a very strange thing happen to me. I believe I might have jumped timelines with my life in an alternate universe or something. I had just gotten off the bus and I was walking towards a place where I was supposed to meet my friend. I'd been walking for about 5 to 10 minutes when suddenly 2 girls of my age rode past me on their bike. They looked back to me and they seemed kind of familiar, but I couldn't place where I knew them from. I actually wasn't sure if I actually knew them, but I looked away. And then they suddenly stopped and called my name. I looked up, and they asked where I needed to go and if I needed a ride. I told them the place and sat on the back of the bike of one of the girls. They drove me there, which took like 3 minutes. They asked me how I was, and I asked them as well. I heard them call each other by their name while talking as well. We arrived at the place and they dropped me off and said bye. One of the girls was called Haley, and the other was something like Alexa or Hannah, something with an A. I can't remember it anymore, but I did remember the name for a few days. I remember being really kind of in shock about what just happened. I asked my friend if he knew those girls and told them their names and what they looked like, but he was sure he'd never met them either. I looked through my entire contact list, but couldn't find either of them. I'm usually really good with names and faces, and it never happens to me that I actually don't recognize someone. So it's crazy to me that even now, 2.5 years later, I still haven't been able to figure out who those girls were. The part that freaked me out the most was they actually knew my name. Do you like Stephen King's Carrie, his very first book? If so, you'd probably be interested in following me along on my first journey into his world. It is strange, unusual, but I'm loving it so far. Over on my Patreon, I've begun a read-along. If that's something that interests you, then go and check it out. Now back to the stories. Case file number 1916, written by Professional Ear 5923. Blue to Green, or Just a Dream. This would have happened in 2018. Honestly, isn't it odd that so many people have stories from this exact time frame? I noticed that year seems to be prominent. Anyways, I had this car, a blue 2001 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. It's the car I learned how to drive on. It honestly didn't get much use by this time period. Kind of just sat there. But I knew that car like the back of my hand. Even though I didn't drive it often anymore, my friends and I would often use it as sort of a hangout spot, as I lived in a small trailer at the time, with my parents and 2 siblings. There wasn't much privacy in that place. This wasn't once or twice, we'd hang out in the car all the time. Pretty much nightly, as I was always with friends getting up to some sort of trouble at this point in my life. We'd hung out in the car as recently as the night before, in fact, and I remember this quite well. That's why it was bizarre the next morning when, upon glancing outside the window of my then home, I noticed that the car was not blue, but green. I took the shortest, most innocuous glance at the thing and had to do a double take. In that moment, I experienced the most surreal feeling, something akin to déjà vu, but with increased intensity followed by this wave of fear, adrenaline almost, like I'd just witnessed something dire or terrifying. I can't really explain my reaction now. My stomach dropped just for a moment. I called all of my friends over to look at the car, and they'd remarked how they could have sworn it was blue as well, one of them without me even prompting them to do so. I hadn't yet told them what was wrong when I said we were going to go check on my car. This is something that has bothered not just me, but everyone else I used to hang out with in that car for a long time now. We even did some digging, and unfortunately I found that in all previous photos of the vehicle, it never appeared to be blue. It was always green. There's one discrepancy though, and it's the title. The title says the car is blue. This entire experience was disturbing in a very odd way, from the emotions it evoked to, well, the questions I still have now, years later, about how something like this even happens. Case file number 1917, written by Nibbles McGiblet. A mother's plea and a daughter's fall. My daughter is 21 now. This happened when she was maybe 3 years old. I was in the kitchen, which was wide open to the living room. Husband was sitting on the couch watching TV, half asleep. Daughter toddling around. I opened the oven door to check on food and turned to get a pot holder out of the nearby drawer. When I turned back, my daughter was almost to me and suddenly fell forward with her hands out. I shrieked, "Oh God, help!" to my husband. In that instant, images flashed through my mind of her landing on it, burning herself horrifically, us going to the emergency room, her being there for a very, very long time, months. She grew older at various stages, covered in horrible burn scars and scar tissue, limiting the movement in her hands and on her face. Her going through plastic surgery after plastic surgery. Our life becomes all about hospitals and surgeries. I felt I lived those lifetimes, all in an instant. Then suddenly, I snapped back into the present, and my husband was looking at me saying, "What?" All irritated. And my daughter was on her hands and knees at least 3 feet back from the oven, where she definitely wasn't seconds prior. I said, "She fell and almost landed right on the oven door." And he said, "She's nowhere near there," and just took a sip of his beer. I've never forgotten this. It was a defining moment in my parenting life, despite her being my youngest and me living through a lot. I told her about this when she was an adult, and she was shocked and she didn't remember it happening. And I said, "Well, you wouldn't, because somehow you just fell down and toddlers do that a lot." And she has told me a few times since how shaken she felt hearing it, and how it haunts her now, because she feels like the timeline was somehow real and happened, but didn't. I've never been so thankful for a glitch in my life. I still think about it from time to time, and my heart jumps into my throat. I know it happened. That was a real life. There's zero doubt. It is what it is. Case file number 1918, written by Tea Party Asian. Royal Albert Hall's Eldritch Scroll on a roll. I'm a choir lad whose choir is fortunate enough to be invited to the Royal Albert Hall a few times each year. Usually our dressing room is in the equivalent of the basement, not as fabulous as some of the big shots, but most of the time the boys invited are younger than 16, so they're always worried we'll break something. Very close to our dressing room is something called the Artist Bar. As the name suggests, it's a bar for performers, and drinks and snacks are sold at an extremely discounted price. As an example, if I were to go upstairs to one of the public cafes or bars found around the building, I could be charged around £4 for a sausage roll, whereas I could get the same thing at the Artist Bar for £1. As I'm over the age of 18, I'm allowed to head to the Artist Bar if I want to buy some food. We're regarded as responsible enough to not blow anything up or get trapped in the tuba or other acts of stupidity. They're quite capable of a well-brewed cup of tea. Still don't know what brand they use, so I like to head down to make sure I don't decide to take a snooze on stage. Something one of our tenors did a few years back during an actual performance. The show was to start at 1 p.m. and we'd arrive early. It was 10:30 a.m., so we'd had plenty of time, because for some reason everyone tended to like being last minute. Nobody around was really dressed, and likely wouldn't be until about 5 minutes until we were expected to be on. So I was wandering around in a shirt and jeans. I was caffeine deprived, so I decided to go get a cup of tea. All the other chaps are in the dressing room, being watched by the chaperones, so it's just me heading up to the Artist Bar. I remember it being frightfully quiet in the hall, which wasn't unexpected, but was sort of chilly, which for some reason made me feel a little tense. I turned into the room and noticed a selection of people who were obviously older than myself, wearing formal attire. It was of very brief interest to me, because caffeine triumphed over anything interesting in my surroundings. I remember thinking that I felt like I was walking into the Overlook Hotel. I expected to be greeted by Jack Torrance at any moment. I also remember one gentleman wearing a tuxedo with a white bow tie, which was sort of weird because the orchestra commonly just wears plain black, and the other choirs were doing the same. The gentleman was wearing what our conductor would be, but he wasn't the conductor. I shrugged and got to the counter, and there were two girls there. What weirded me out more was the way they were sitting. There are 2 or so chairs usually on the left side of the bar, so whoever is on shift at the time doesn't need to stand infinitely. They're stationed at the left wall, so the servers aren't faced towards me, but I can see their faces. If I was a server, my customer would be forward, then right. Both girls are sitting back against chairs, legs on the floor, and their hands placed perfectly forward on both legs. There's a small smile on both their faces, but they're looking straight forward, not at me, but at the opposite wall. They look sort of like dolls, and they're sitting in silence until I snap out of my bemusement and cough a little. Excuse me? One of the girls stands up. The way she moves is honestly ridiculously robotic. It's another thing that's a little disconcerting, because she first stands, walks forward, still smiling, then suddenly turns at a 90-degree angle to face me in silence. Hi there, I was just hoping to get some tea? Her smile widens, but when she speaks, it's monotone. I lean back slightly in shock. Of course, sir, that will be £1. I hand her the coin, and as she turns to make the drink, I realize how quiet the room is. I look around and turn to see that the people from earlier are just looking at each other. No talking, just sort of staring. Okay then. My drink is put in front of me. It's not exactly difficult to pour boiling water into a tea bag, so it really didn't take long. I thank the girl, who is now just staring at me, walk over to the counter, lid off, pour a little milk in, lid on, and because I feel so uncomfortable, I try to power walk out. I get out of the room, and I'm about to turn back down the hallway to the dressing room, when I take a sip, and my brain just goes, bloody hell, this needs sweetness. I'm about maybe 5 meters from the artist bar, facing away. Because the atmosphere felt so weird, I had a very brief debate with myself about going back. The hallway is silent. I would hear if people were walking down the hall. So when I finally decide, bugger it, I'll grab some sugar and leave. At best, a 15-second argument with my inner monologue. You can imagine my shock when I turn, walk up to the doorway, and the room is dark as hell because the lights are off. I poke my head in further and turn my phone flashlight on. Nobody at the counter, nobody at the tables. The room was bloody empty, and I heard nobody leave. There was no sign of anything. Unnerved beyond all else, I book it. Somewhat gently. I'm not going to spill this drink no matter how spooked I may be. Back to my room. As I walk in, I'm given a strange look by a chaperone. Where'd you get the drink from? Did you go up to the cafe? I'm confused. No, I just headed to the artist bar. Cue her confusion. The artist bar isn't open until 12 today. The saddest bit was I didn't get to finish my drink because we were called up for rehearsal. And cold tea is just forbidden. I've never had anything similar happen with the artist bar. When I described the courier girls to one of the organizers at the event, I was given a weird look and told nobody of that appearance was employed at the Albert Hall. Case file number 1919, written by Goldie304. The game's not over yet, but the outcome's set. This has happened twice in my life now, and I cannot, for the life of me, explain it. I was sitting on my couch watching a Sunday night football game. The game was heading into the fourth quarter, and the home team was up by 14 points. During the commercial break on ESPN, Scott Van Pelt appeared behind his announcer desk and said, "And when we return, we will talk with Rodgers on his winning drive and 17-point comeback." I heard this clearly. I watched him say it. I thought to myself, why would SVP say he's going to interview Rodgers if the game isn't over? Better yet, why is he assuming they're going to win? I quickly texted my friend, who were also watching the game, and asked if they also thought it was weird that SVP announced that the Packers were going to win when the game wasn't over. Their replies were a combination of, "What? And what do you mean?" Fourth quarter comes. The Packers end up scoring 2 touchdowns and kicking a field goal to win. SVP interviewed Rodgers after the game, just like he said during the commercial break. I couldn't revisit this with my friends, given they had no idea what I was talking about initially. I brought it up to my wife later that night. She couldn't wrap her head around what I was trying to explain. It's like I witnessed the moment before it occurred and was told the outcome. This has happened again recently, during an NBA playoff game. This time, it included the final score. It happened so randomly. I compare it to déjà vu, but I'm fully awake. Case file number 1920. Written by 420 Mia Wallace. About a month ago, I moved out of my parents' house into a new state on my own. I'm super type A about my clothes, and I'd brought my favorite nude strapless bra with me. I wear it more than any other bra and wore it about 3 times after moving to my new apartment. During the second week in the new place, I wore the bra to class and took it off after I got back to the apartment. The next night, I wanted to wear it again and tore the entire place apart when I couldn't find it. This is a small studio apartment, less than 300 square feet. I vividly remember putting it back in my underwear drawer after class the day before. Despite being extremely confused, I convinced myself that I must have thrown it out with the trash somehow. Crazy. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. I went home to visit my parents' house this past weekend and went upstairs to visit my little sister before unpacking my suitcase. Lo and behold, I see a very familiar nude bra in a pile of clothes on her bedroom floor. Now, this was striking because I picked it up and noticed it was my size, and the exact same bra went missing from my apartment. Before you make any assumptions, we are completely different bra sizes. I'm barely a B cup, and she's a larger than D. I'm a 32 band, and she's probably closer to a 36. And she has never stepped foot in my apartment, and hasn't seen me once since I moved out. I truly can't explain this, and almost had an existential crisis when I saw the damn bra sitting on her floor. My jaw just about hit the ground when I asked her where she got it, and she goes, "I borrowed it from you, but it doesn't really fit." Case file number 1921, written by I'm Reba, MC and Tired. Brother's Deed, a confession indeed. My social security card was stolen out of my room about 8 years ago. I came home from work one day, and I kept it inside a safe in my closet. I noticed my room had been torn apart. The safe was busted open. This was a cheap key Walmart type safe with nothing major. And the first thing I noticed was that my social security card was gone. I was so confused because I lived with roommates at the time. Those roommates were like family to me. Never suspected it was something they would have done. I eventually found out it was one of my roommate's brothers. He was visiting the house for a few days and had a history of trouble. I knew it had to be him. This is the weird part. I confronted the brother of my roommate one night about it. He was shocked and upset when I did. He admitted to me he took it and said he was sorry. I asked him why he did it, and he said he was involved in a scamming ring. Thought I would be an easy target. He then said that he felt so bad about taking my personal information that he panicked and threw it into a sewer drain to get rid of all of it. I was upset that he did this, but I moved past that and years went by. About 2 weeks ago, I was cleaning out my book bag that I use daily. I have 2 of my older wallets inside, with random school IDs and other things. Note, I have thoroughly checked these wallets many times in the past 8 years. So I pulled these wallets out and wanted to check and see what was inside them. I pulled a stack of school IDs out, and behind them was my actual social security card that I thought had been stolen and missing for the past 8 years. I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it if I had just found it one day, but the person who took it from me admitted he did it and apologized, saying he threw it into a sewer drain. So how did it get back here? Case file number 1922, written by GreatAd271. From Storm to Song, the drive that felt all wrong. To start, my fiancé and I, both 30 female, were on a 3-hour drive home after going away for a long weekend. It's a drive we do semi-regularly, and so I know the route well, and wasn't too freaked out by the storm that I was driving us through. However, at one point, I realized I was getting super tired and felt my eyes doing the long flutter shut every now and then. I asked my fiancée to put on some music, hoping it would keep me awake since she was basically asleep on her side of the car and wasn't being a good co-pilot. She started up a playlist of an album we've listened to 100 times on Spotify. It didn't take long until my eyes were closing again though, and after one particularly long blink, I jerked awake when I realized that the song had changed. Not to another song, but like the cadence, the speed, the production, etc. It was the same song, but produced differently. Like a very mild remix. You wouldn't notice unless you knew the album as well as I did. I immediately asked my fiancée if she noticed the change, and she brushed me off, still half asleep. I kept listening, and each song that played after sounded off. It was starting to drive me crazy, but I stayed quiet and panicked to myself that maybe I was imagining it. My friends and I have joked about before, I had slipped into a parallel universe. Usually the thought is amusing, but for some reason, I was filled with this cold dread and panic, and I knew something had happened. I started freaking out more because I didn't want to be alone in a new universe. Dumb, I know. And then suddenly, my fiancé gives a gasp and wakes up and immediately goes, "That's not the right note for this song." We both look at each other and she immediately starts Googling to see what's going on. Quickly, we realize all streaming music has this new version on it, while my phone, which I had bought the album on, had the original album that sounded exactly as we remembered. Now okay, an updated version was released for sure, but we follow this artist very closely and never heard anything about it. Yet Google said the entire album was reproduced and, this is super important, replaced on streaming months ago, which makes no sense because we stream it on her Spotify account all the time. Okay, fine. Maybe Spotify had both versions for a while or something, or maybe we use my phone more often than we thought. We made a usual joke about moving to an alternate universe, but it felt flat for both of us because something about this didn't feel quite right. Then out of nowhere, her car starts pouring water in through the passenger side dashboard. I freaked out wondering how that could happen in a relatively new and recently inspected car, especially mid-drive. My fiancé managed to clean it up, and within a couple of minutes, it stopped just as abruptly, but there had been enough water that she had to pour out the rubber mat at her feet. At this point, we realized that the landscape was totally unfamiliar, even though the GPS claimed we were taking our normal route. We chalked it up to the rain and our anxiety, but both of us kept looking at each other silently whenever we passed something new along the road. We finished the drive feeling super uncomfortable and wondering what the hell was going on. We spend the next few days moving past it or trying to, only things keep being just a bit off. I found out a celebrity I loved as a kid, Shannon Doherty, died in July. But I vividly remember seeing an interview with her recently, where she commented on finally beating her cancer. Weird, but maybe it was a super old clip or something? I assumed it was new? It didn't sit right, but it can happen with social media. Next, this week I was looking through some photos on a flash drive with my fiancé, only to see that while most of the photos on there were normal, not only are some key photos missing, but there are also new photos and videos I've never seen before in my life. Even though this is the same flash drive I've been using for the past 10 years, and I literally went through everything that was on it last year, so I knew what was there. Weirder still was a photo marked with the year 94 by the camera itself, with that glowing digital date they used to use, and the photo is of me in the house my mom didn't buy until the year 2000. I should have been an infant in the photo, but instead I seemed to be about 5 or 6. Must be a camera glitch, I guess, but none of the other photos, all from the same day, have that problem. My fiancé also noticed that our pets are acting strangely. They were overly excited to see us upon returning home, and have continued to be far more affectionate than usual. Heck, One kitten even seemed to have gotten significantly bigger, which obviously kittens do, but not in the 3 days we'd been gone. Hell, now the fish is clearly red with blue edges, when she was blue with purple edges before, which I'm trying to attribute to lighting and water pH balance, moon cycles, whatever is most logical. We're trying to use logic for all this, and just roll with it. But it's very difficult when we keep having these jarring moments where we go, what the hell? I know this isn't how it was before. So yeah, basically I have no idea what happened, or if we're just imagining all this. But I can't shake the feeling that we're moving forward in a place we didn't come from. Case file number 1923, written by Plastic Context 8570. Sounds abound, but no one around. I recently moved into a 2-story apartment with no upstairs or downstairs neighbors. I've heard weird things a lot since I've been here. Footsteps, drawers opening and closing, my door slamming. But something I can't even explain just happened. My roommate is at work, and I'm the only one home. I was sitting downstairs zoned out and drawing when I realized I was hearing footsteps and noise upstairs, followed by the noise of, I crap you not, the shower turning on. After a while of sitting there listening, I finally got the courage to go upstairs and check the bathroom. The shower curtain was completely closed, and sure enough, the water was running. I could see the water drops hitting the curtain and slightly moving it. I heard it hitting the bottom of the tub. I know it wasn't on before, and honestly this really freaked me out. So naturally I got the hell out of there and hid downstairs shaking, until I found the strength to go back up and open the curtain. After about 10 minutes, I heard the shower turn off, the curtains move, loud footsteps, then silence. I somehow got myself to go back up about 20 minutes later to look in the bathroom. The curtains were now open halfway so you could see into the shower, and the water was off. I checked the whole upstairs and found nothing. No one came down and no one went up. What the hell happened? Case file number 1924, written by OK Association 8471, Lectures at Clypeda's Gate, Parallel Worlds at a Strange Rate. So we are 9th graders, and basically, there was like a program in our school where only 10 people can go to. You could sign up if you want to, it was your choice. So basically, you can sign up to go to the university to get lectures about biophysics in the 4th class instead of art class. So I signed up, of course, and my friend too. The signing up was 4 weeks ago. So the university is like a big castle, really old. The inside is old too. Look up on Google, Clypeda's University. So the first time we all went there, had a chill 20-minute lecture. The second week we went near the door, it was room 213, 2nd floor. The lecturer didn't even come, and the door was locked. So we went home, and it turns out he was sick that day. Today is the 3rd week. Me and my friend met up, went to the university from our school. It's like 2 kilometers away. So the lecture started in a small classroom at 10:55. The 3rd class ended at 10:35, so we had 20 minutes. So we came to the university, near the door, it was exactly 10:50, and the door was still locked. I looked out the window to see if anyone was coming, no one in sight. But 1 minute later, 2 other classmates came, then we sat at the hallway chairs to wait. There was also an old man painting the walls with white paint on a ladder. Then the lecturer came and unlocked the door. It was 10:55. We went in. 2 minutes later, 2 other classmates came in too. So there were about 4 people who were absent. The lecturer didn't lock the door, just in case somebody was late. Then the lecture was for like 20 minutes or so. It ended, and we went back to school. As I was walking, I decided to check my class group chat. I usually keep it muted since they talk about bullcrap, etc. I don't want to get into that. So I see my classmate that didn't come to class, and the other girl saying on the group chat, is the lecture even going to happen? And they had just decided to go home since it's not going to happen. Then I said that the lecture happened. The guy, classmate that missed the lecture, said that the door was locked and no one was there. Here's the part where it all happens. So we go back to the school, and our friend is saying, why didn't we tell him that the lecture happened? I actually didn't even look at the chat since I kept it muted. So I explained that me and my other friend were there, at 10:50, checking to see if the door was locked. And I was looking at the window. The guy was confused. He said at exactly 10:50, he checked to see if the door was open too, or not. We were at 10:50 checking too, at the same time. At 10:55, the lector came out and unlocked it. The guy said that at 10:55 he checked again if it's locked. It was. But at 10:55 the lecturer opened the door. So he double checks to see if he's in the right room, checking if he actually is. And it was room 213 at 10:55. It was locked, but only for him. So basically, I'm going to tell from his perspective. At 10:50, I came near the room 213. No one was in the hallway, didn't even hear anyone walking upstairs or anything, pure silence. I tried opening the door, but it was locked, so I went to the third floor to double check. Maybe my other classmates were watching there. No one was there either. So when it was 10:57, I went to the second floor again and checked if room 213 was locked, and it was. Didn't hear anyone talking there or anyone at all in the hallways. Then I basically exited the university. Now, my perspective, at 10:50, I was with my friend checking to see if the door was locked, and it was. At 10:47, I was looking outside the window to see if anyone was coming to the university. No one was in sight. Then also at 10:50, we saw the ladder guy painting the walls. At 10:55, the lecturer came and opened the door, we went inside, and the lecturer didn't lock the door. At around 10:57, my other classmates came in. And, to sum it up, the guy, lost classmate, didn't even see anyone at university. He didn't see us at the exact same time. He didn't see the ladder guy either, and he didn't see my other friends walking upstairs at 10:57, as he was also walking downstairs. And if you think he was bullcrapping, the other classmates were with him, and they agreed with what he said, so I think it's true. He double-checked the room, it was the right one, the same big table in the hallway too. He was in the same place, as we were standing at the exact same time, yet he didn't hear or see us. And we didn't see the lost guy and the girls. Me and my friends couldn't even hear them walking the stairs or even talking. He didn't either. Were we in a parallel world, multiverse? I would really like an explanation. Oh, and forgot to add, about somewhere at 10:55 he was checking if the door was closed or not. But we were at the time in the class and the door was unlocked. We didn't even hear if he was trying to open it. Case file number 1925, written by Friendship Entire 6364. Between Monday and Wednesday, we vanished away. In 2014, I was living with my then boyfriend and working debt collections for a pretty well-known company. I hated the job and had begun to feel like my day-to-day life was really mundane. Because we had access to people's sensitive information, full social security numbers, addresses, etc., we weren't allowed to even bring our phones into the building. Once a month, they would put us on required overtime when we were working on accounts that were getting ready to go into the next phase of collections. I worked 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday and was scheduled 9 a.m. 7 p.m. Tuesday and Wednesday. I got home from work Monday night and watched Netflix with my boyfriend until I fell asleep. Woke up the next day to pee, and when I checked the time, it was 8:13. I assume I had forgot to set an alarm, freaked out for a minute, and rushed to get ready for work. I pulled into the parking lot at 8:56 and was feeling pretty good about it, still making it to work on time. As I was clocking in, my coworker Anna stopped me and asked me, "Where were you yesterday?" I said, here? She insisted I wasn't, which I thought was really weird, but I just brushed it off, clocked in, and went to my desk. Anna and I were pretty close as far as coworkers go. We bitched about the job throughout the workday, and texted and engaged with each other on social media outside of work daily. About 20 minutes into my shift, I glanced at the calendar on my computer, and it was showing it was Wednesday. I genuinely thought Anna was playing a weird prank on me and had messed with my computer settings, since she asked where I was when she knew full well I was there yesterday. On my lunch break, I went out to my car, as I did every shift. When I turned my phone on, it also said it was Wednesday. I started panicking and called my boyfriend. He worked second shift and hadn't yet gone into work, but looked at his phone and had the same realization and also started freaking out. Now the really weird thing is, no one in either of our lives seemed to notice except Anna. I wasn't super hungry or thirsty, as I assumed I would be if I hadn't consumed anything for an entire day. We both were heavy smokers at the time, but neither of us woke up feeling like we really needed a cigarette. We lived with my boyfriend's 2 brothers, and we had 2 dogs. One was an elderly dog, and the other was just a puppy, so they both required pretty frequent trips outside. Our room was in the basement, and we had a baby gate at the top of the stairs to keep them from roaming the house while we were sleeping. Neither of the dogs had an accident in our room, nor did they eat as though they hadn't been fed in over 24 hours. I asked both of his brothers, and they hadn't let the dogs out or fed them Tuesday. I am really close with my mom, and we talk on the phone on my way to and from work every day, yet she didn't mention anything about not talking to me for an entire day. Neither of us were written up for no call, no show on a shift, or even spoken to by management about the missed shift. Neither of us had any missed calls or texts from Tuesday. To this day, I have no reasonable explanation for what happened that caused us to lose an entire day. If I had been living alone, I would have chalked it up to somehow being so exhausted, or maybe having a weird 24-hour illness or something that made me sleep through an entire day. But the fact that both of us experienced the same thing with no consequences made it even weirder. I think about this regularly, and no one I've spoken to about it can come up with anything plausible either. It feels as though we went to sleep Monday, ceased to exist in this reality on Tuesday, and then resumed normal life on Wednesday. Case file number 1926, written by Diddle the Twiddle, a time-twisting morning with no warning. My alarm goes off every morning at 3:32 a.m. I snoozed a few times and got out of bed before 4. I'm out of the door by 4:10. I picked up a friend of mine, Kelly, on the way. We stopped at the gas station and arrived at work by 4:50. Shift starts at 5. I've held this routine for a few months now. I'm pretty used to it. This morning, October 8th, started like every other, with me out of the house around 4:10. I'm not even a few miles down the road when Kelly calls me and says, "Hey, where are you?" "On my way to get you for work." This is when, simultaneously, I look at the clock in my truck and chose, while Kelly says, "You know it's 5:15 and not 4:15, right?" I am so confused and don't even understand how that's possible. She says she already called off and hangs up. I head to work. I don't really give it much more thought, assuming I just messed up my alarm or getting up. Fast forward to about 8 p.m. this evening, and I call her to ask her to call me when she wakes up in the morning to make sure I'm up. I've never had to have her do this before. So, while we're on the phone, she tells me that she walked into her kitchen at 4:15, and when she came back to the living room, it was exactly an hour later. I don't really freak out about things, but I can't stop thinking about how and why. What changed? Where did that hour go? For both of us. Case file number 1927, written by Radioactive EJ. Emotional Gaze in the Exhibits Maze. I work in a popular museum in the UK, which requires me to roam around specific attractions and talk about the history and genuinely make sure all the visitors are safe. However, I had a very strange moment with a pair of visitors. As they entered the area I was in, they did not stop looking at me, even though they had audio guides for the exhibit. There was no real reason for them to make as much eye contact with me as they did. I myself am 25. And I just presume they must have a question that they're working out how to ask. So I went over to them and said hello. They were very friendly back with me, but the smiles they gave were super emotional. It honestly felt like they weren't listening to what I was saying, but just me talking. I can't put it into words, but it was very intense. They seemed very happy to just listen to me, but their facial expressions did not change when I was speaking. It was just very over-emotional. I managed to tell them about the exhibit, give them some information, but their eyes, in both of them, were beginning to tear up. I genuinely thought they must be going through something, and they're being polite, and that they're just hearing me out. But here's the kicker. After talking to them for about 5 minutes, every time I went to leave, they'd ask a random question and again continue just listening, whilst also being very melancholic with me. I started to feel a bit off, but my break was coming up, so I said goodbye and began to leave. This is where both of them thanked me, and then also thanked me by my name. Then they both left. They didn't even look around the exhibit properly, they just moved on teary-eyed. Now here's the thing, I don't introduce myself with my name at work. We don't share each other's names. And yes, we have name tags, but I haven't ever put mine on, as I don't like people knowing my name. I like that boundary. To this day, I have no clue why they were both emotional and how they both knew my name. They left briskly, and they both looked like they were about to cry. I have until this moment never given anything a thought, but this is a genuinely unexplainable situation. I have never met them in my life. I know all my relatives. I just can't put it into words, the constant feel of sadness and bittersweet that was given off by them as they sort of spoke to me. Now I also know I have not given them my name, my colleagues haven't, and I wear nothing with my name on, so that's the part that made me think, what can this interaction be? Who were they? Case file number 1928, written by Pat's Cutie 81. In the rush of the brew, scissors turned 2. I work for a popular coffee and donut shop chain, and on this particular day, I was really busy serving a lineup of customers at the storefront. We were short-staffed, so I was handling the line all by myself, when I ran out of cream in my cream machine. I didn't have time to go to the back to grab a new bag of cream, so when the baker came out front to stage some new donuts, I asked her if she would run to the fridge and bring me out a new bag of cream, while I continued to serve customers. She brought me the bag of cream, set up the hopper, and put it in the machine for me. All I had to do was cut the hose. So at the front of the house, we only used the lime green colored scissors, and at the back of the house and kitchen, we only use black handled scissors for food prep. There is usually 1 or 2 pairs of the lime green scissors at my station at the storefront. Our countertops are black, so lime green scissors really stand out on them. You can't miss them. Additionally, we keep a very clean and organized counter area, so there really is nothing else on the countertops, except for the machines, cups, lids, stirring spoons, and the scissors. I reach my hand under the brewing stand to grab the scissors, and they aren't there. I check all around the storefront area, anywhere I thought scissors may be, and nothing. So I asked the baker if she wouldn't mind grabbing me a pair of scissors to cut the bag of cream. When she came back, she handed me a pair of black-handled scissors. I know this for certain because I immediately thought to myself, these are the wrong scissors for up here. We never use the black ones out front. They're meant for food prep. But because she's a baker and does all the food prep, she automatically grabbed black ones. I didn't mention this at all to her. Being in a hurry and needing that cream open, I thought, screw it. I'm using the black ones and I'll put them in the dishwasher as soon as I have a moment. I get through the line of customers, maybe 4 or 5 minutes have passed, and I start to wipe down and sanitize my counter area. No other staff members have come up front to my area of the store. Everyone else was working drive-thru. As I'm wiping everything down, I discover not 1, but 2 pairs of lime green handled scissors right there underneath the brewing stands. The very first place I had looked for them. And the black scissors were nowhere to be found. I was so confused. I thought that maybe I had misremembered, so I immediately went back to ask the baker what color the scissors were that she brought me. She told me that she had brought me the black-handled scissors. I then asked if she had taken them back and switched them out with the green ones. She said no. She was just as confused as I was. I then went around asking everyone if they had brought 2 pairs of green scissors up front. and they all said they hadn't. So, to summarize, one pair of black scissors turned into 2 pairs of bright green scissors, and I still don't know what happened to the black pair. Case file number 1929, written by OK Supermarket 8659. Invisible romance without a chance. Back when I was in high school, I, 20 male, was fairly popular and had a pretty decent group of friends. I was well enough liked, but struggled getting a girlfriend for a variety of reasons. I didn't want to date the myriad of girls my friends tried to set me up with. I was well and truly a happy single. However, I was a bit insecure about the fact that all my friends were dating, many of them, and I was being left alone. Enter this random girl who follows me on Instagram one day. 1 or 2 mutuals who are all mutual friends of themselves. Very far away from my social circle. She replies to one of my stories, I talk to her a bit, and I essentially string her along. It's clear she's interested, so we even meet up one day. Then I have a bright idea. I tell my friends this girl is my girlfriend. She lived really far away from our high school, and none of them knew anyone who knew her. No social overlap. It was perfect. I even texted her every now and then and talk on call to keep up the facade. She obviously is happy to oblige because she likes me. I will never meet her again though. Remember this. This is key. So a year later, when we're done with high school, I finally decide I'm ready to date. So I staged a fake breakup with her. My friends all console me, and I'm happy as a clam that I got away with this. I texted her a few more times. We hadn't called in a while anyway. I dated another girl for 2 months, and that's that. So I'm in college now. This is my 4th semester. Last week, one of my friends asked me if I remember so-and-so, the girl I pretended to date. I say I do. He says that he kinda misses her. She was a good fit for me. I laugh and ask him what makes him say that, since he's never met her. He tells me, but you used to bring her over all the time. I'm confused. I ask him what he's on about. He shows me pictures of all of us together, and her sitting with us. I try to act nonchalant, but he's kinda concerned at this point. I waved it off as a joke, and I didn't mention it until he left. At that point, I scrolled through my own gallery, and sure enough, there isn't a single picture of her, so I relax. Then, just as an afterthought, I go to my Instagram story archives. In that 1 year, there had to be like 60 or 70 stories of us together. This cannot be doctored. I casually ask some of my friends if they do remember her. They all do. I finally cave and contact her. She picked up my call. We made small talk. I couldn't just ask her if we had ever dated, so I mentioned the good old days, and she agreed. She talked about the events that never happened. She even referenced the breakup that never happened, and it was exactly the same as a lie I told everyone. Case file number 1930. Written by Newfound Fool. A tale of 2 faces in all the wrong places. My friend and I are constantly mistaken for each other, to the point where when it started, we thought it was cute and funny, but it has been going on for so long and keeps happening more and more that it's just old now and starting to freak me out. One would think surely we must look alike, right? Well, not really. I don't think our faces look anything alike, and people agree with me. Me, 39 female, mid-length hair, brunette. I have a very colorful sleeve. Her, let's call her Betty B, 33 female, long blonde hair. She has individual black and gray tattoos all over. We are about the same height, but different build. It makes absolutely no sense, but if we are at an event, someone will think we're the other person, minimum once each. And some of these people know us very well. I have a full 15-minute conversation with a friend one night at a party, before I realized she thought she was talking to my other friend. It's almost getting worse too. It started happening to some of our close friends. To give some context, in the run of a weekend camping trip with a bunch of friends, this happened to me 3 times. I've known most of these people for over 8 years, and I brought her into the community about 6 years ago. With the 2 of us, it goes both ways. It gets weirder. There's another female friend, let's call her Batty B, 36 female, similar height, long darker blonde hair, full colored sleeves and hands, and a more curvy doggy than mine. Makes me wish I was this one. I don't think we look alike in the face either, except maybe a similar shape of face. We're not as close, so people don't get together as much, but people have also mistaken me for her for almost 10 years. Even 2 of her boyfriends thought I was her at one point. People thinking I'm Batty B actually makes more sense than mixing me up with Betty B. One more example. My whole life, I've had this feeling that people don't remember my face, so I always reintroduce myself. Despite being a large personality, I've been told I'm hard to forget. Which, check out, I'm fun, loud, and adorable. We were throwing a big fundraiser event where everyone dresses up. I had a killer outfit and added a long braid extension to my ponytail. Only once that night was I mistaken for my friend. But I would say 60% of my friends didn't know who I was. It was the strangest experience. Imagine going to a party full of your friends, and over half of them don't recognize you. It makes no sense. I was wearing makeup, but not any more than usual. All my friends who did recognize me couldn't believe that others couldn't. I found out later that I had in-depth conversations with friends, and they thought they were talking to random people. They didn't realize it until all the photos of the event were posted and they all saw me with my partner. That was the night I realized I should have been a spy, and I feel bad for calling Superman's disguise stupid. Case file number 1931, written by Anonymous. The nice young man in the blue suit. I worked in a nursing home a while back as a cook. It was a good job. The residents were cool and the nurses rocked. Being a nursing home, however, meant that death came to our residents pretty frequently. Occasionally, staff would see strange things in the halls out of the corner of their eyes. The newer staff would always try to investigate. The older staff always knew they would find nothing. Here is the strangest thing though. A day before a patient died, they were lucid. They would report having had a visitor, despite no one being in the visitor logs. The visitor was always a young man, generically handsome, clean-cut, and would sit with the patient and they would talk. The patients who spoke of this man always said that they felt better after the talk, but inevitably they would die within 24 hours. Even seemingly healthy residents would pass away within 24 hours. So when a resident brought up the young man in the blue suit, the nurses would unofficially contact the family and strongly encourage them to visit the resident. Earlier I mentioned that the staff were seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. A person walking into a resident's room, a little blur of movement at the end of the hall. Several staff, myself included, got more direct looks at this entity. It was usually in a restroom or a resident's room. Always in a reflection, but definitely there. He seemed to be checking on the residents, placing a hand on them, and then leaving the room and vanishing. He would show up for non-nursing staff in restrooms or via reflective surfaces in staff-only areas, there to guide and comfort the dying towards the end of their lives. He genuinely seemed to ease the burdens hanging on the residents, and they seemed to pass away pretty easily. Case file number 1932, written by Uncommercialized Male. The night a creature left its mark in the silent dark. When I was about 7 or 8, I woke up to the sound of our dog barking furiously. I remember her barking viciously, which usually meant there were coyotes or raccoons in the yard. I sat up, about to check for coyotes. My dad was a heavy sleeper. I often had to wake him up to shoot coyotes before he let me have his air rifle. When I heard our dog yelp, our dog was a scrappy black lab who would spend half the night chasing and fighting creatures of the night. She never backed down from a fight. Which is why we often kept her on a long chain at night. She would sound the alarm and we would chase off the coyotes from the yard. keeping her from getting seriously hurt. I say this because I had never heard her yelp. Seconds after she yelps, I hear and see something big running between my window and the well house. I could hear ragged breathing and galloping, and as it passed by my window, I saw the outline of its hunched back filling half my window pane. Our house sat on a 2-foot stone foundation, and my windows were about 6 feet off the ground. This thing had to be at least 8 feet tall, possibly taller, since it sounded like it was galloping on 4 legs. I heard it pause for just a second to jump the fence about 20 feet from my room before it continued on, and it faded into the night. I'll never forget sitting frozen in bed, listening to its ragged breathing and footfalls rapidly fading away. Dog didn't bark the rest of the night. She was probably hiding in her doghouse, and it took me a while before I could lay down and fall back asleep. There was a window right next to the head of my bed, and I was terrified that I would lay down and see the face of the beast staring at me. Never mentioned it to my family. Figured they wouldn't believe me anyways. Case file number 1933, written by Vampire Wolf. The vanished week's mire left questions dire. I still have no idea what happened to that missing week, 11 years later. Gather around, story time. I graduated as an electronics technician in 2006 and pushed my career path hard and fast. Production tech for a year, warranty for 2 years, Q&A for 6 months, QA reliability tech for a year, then into regional management. For that 7 years, I was pushing my body and mind, working 12 hours a day on average. Working my day job and then IT work in the evenings, or just getting more work done than should have been humanly possible towards the end of it. 205, 250 hours a month average, over 300 a couple times, for $160K salary. I lost the company lottery in 2013. Long story, but the company hired based on projects and bids, then let management fire whoever they wanted. So now I'm downsized in May 2013, while every group I was part of was shutting down for summer, which means I have time to kill. I managed to kill May. June I spent 2 or 3 weeks online, quite literally. I even slept a couple hours a day at my computer, if I slept. Did you know lolcats and I Can Has Cheeseburger have an end? YouTube takes you to the weird side and back to the normal side if you click random videos long enough. Then I lost a week. No computer records, see, IT. No bank records, no phone records. No mystery food in the fridge, no laundry. If I spent anything, it was less than $100, as I normally have 40 to 100 on me. I went from sitting at my computer to sitting in my recliner, and a week had gone by. I still have no clue what happened, just a momentary hiccup and missing time. But it's an entire week. Case file number 1934, written by Hey Holly J. From bubbly to shy, a life's a big why. This happened several years ago in college, and I still can't fully explain it. Before you ask, I was sleeping normally. I've never had a severe head injury, and I was not under any unusual amount of stress. I was sitting in one of my classes taking notes while the professor lectured, when I suddenly realized that my entire existence and identity had completely changed. I don't remember anything about my former existence, but I am absolutely certain that my reality transformed in that moment. I had the eerie feeling that I was magically in a different body, with a different personal history, a different family and friends, sitting in a different class with different people around me, maybe in a different place. The wildest part about it is that I looked down at my notes, and they had nothing to do with the class I was sitting in. Like my hand was still mid-writing a sentence, but the stuff I had written before, transition, was just about business marketing concepts that I had never learned about in any class in college. And the professor was clearly currently lecturing about public health. It was my handwriting though. I started looking around really perturbed, and I probably gasped, because the professor stopped and asked if I was okay. I got up and left the class and immediately walked to the psychological counseling center, because I thought I had a schizophrenic episode or something, and I might need professional help. It was 2 people, probably in case they needed to sign me in for involuntary hospitalization, triaged me, and considered admitting me for inpatient treatment because I was pretty frantic and talking about how I didn't truly exist and I wasn't real. After calming down and talking a lot, they said I had probably experienced a severe dissociative episode, but no one could explain the notes I showed them, and they all agreed that it was weird, but said I probably just forgot about the notes from a different class and spaced out. Again, I never took a business class, and had to look up terms and formulas from the notes to even know what they meant. I wasn't convinced, so they brought out the actual DSM book to show me that my symptoms aligned with dissociation. I had to lie to them and tell them I believed it was a dissociative episode, and spent a long time talking and convincing them that I was okay to avoid going to the hospital. Maybe I did dissociate, but that doesn't explain my apparent lasting personality change from that time on. I was supposedly a very bubbly, outgoing person before, and I am decidedly a reserved and shy person now. Writing this out is literally stressing me out so much right now because it's so vulnerable. I have completely different interests and goals now than I did before the episode. I will admit that I had some depression and anxiety throughout my life, but never anything that altered my perception of reality. The experience still really baffles me, and I try not to think about it too much because I start wondering about my existence in alternate timelines, etc. And it's a spiral that makes me feel a little sad. It makes me feel like my lifelong relationships aren't genuine. I haven't really been able to maintain these relationships anyways. My family has almost completely disowned me because they say that I changed and lost my values when I moved away from home for college. I can't relate to them at all. We struggle to communicate, and I don't love anyone in my family. I do love many other people, so I'm not just some psychopath. I haven't felt anything when people in my family have died, but I've been devastated by the deaths and misfortunes of other loved ones, mostly people I met after the episode. This isn't your classic case of conservative parents disowning their newly progressive child. My parents say that I used to care about important things like getting married and having kids, but I can't remember ever having a desire to get married. I've always been terrified of the thought of having children. I don't enjoy or care about supposed family traditions, and I have entirely different taste in food, entertainment, style, everything. I'm also weirdly the only person in my family who doesn't speak with a deep southern accent, and I remember people commenting on it after the episode. I've seen freaky videos of myself as a kid where my accent is clearly different. I even speak in a much higher pitch. But I think I made a conscious decision to drop the accent so people wouldn't think I was dumb. I'm not sure though. It's like a hazy memory. A lot of my memories feel this way. Nothing from before the episode is clear, like the memories I've made after the episode. No one in college commented that my accent had changed, so maybe it was just more striking to my hometown friends because they hadn't heard from me in a while. It's confusing, but I feel like I can't be the same person my parents raised. Many of my friends who I allegedly grew up with have also said that I seem really different since I went away to college. I definitely matured a lot and developed as a person, but their comments have made me think that I'm really not the same person. I can't seem to relate to them on anything, and I don't understand how we ever hung out, especially when it comes to humor. We don't laugh at any of the same stuff. I feel like I have to pretend to be someone else to spend time with them, so our friendships have fizzled out. They often want to gossip about people from our childhoods, but I feel no connection to those people, and I don't care about gossiping because they're basically strangers to me. Even in college, I was a leader and founder in a sorority before the episode, but afterwards I couldn't understand why I would ever pay to be part of an organization with such strict and old school rules. I hated the events I helped organize and attended, and the rituals were meaningless to me. I went from wearing my t-shirts and bags emblazoned with sorority's Greek letters every day to not wanting to touch those items because they felt like someone else's possessions. I left the sisterhood, which was apparently surprising to everyone except me. One troubling thing is that I don't really care about the relationships I've lost because of my personality change. I don't feel like I even really know these people. So it doesn't matter to me if they don't like me or are surprised by my behavior. I've pretty much had to restart and make entirely different friends since this happened. But I've also reconnected with people from my past who say I'm nothing like they remember, and we've gotten along really well. I can't explain why I wasn't closer to these people all along, because we have shared interests, values, communication styles, etc. My memories of things I liked doing before are not things I would enjoy now, and I don't understand how I ever did. For example, I apparently skipped prom to go fishing because I didn't want to pay the entrance fee, but I love dressing up and dancing, and I don't like fishing. This makes absolutely no sense to me. I have tattoos whose significance I don't totally understand. They look pretty, but I can't explain why I got them, and don't remember where the idea for them came from. When I see pictures of myself from before, I look like a stranger to me. I dress differently, stand differently, smile differently. It's perturbing to me, but other people don't seem to notice. There's something really off about my eyes in photos from before, and it makes me feel uneasy. It's like the way I held the muscles in my face while smiling was different than before. I can make my face look like that now, but it's not how I naturally smile. I still sometimes have a hard time with pictures because I don't feel like I'm the person in the photo. I really hate mirrors and always worry that she, my reflection, is going to take back control or something. I'm afraid to look my reflection in the eyes. One major worry I have is that one day I'll just switch back and have to go through all this again. Maybe it will happen multiple times. Maybe I'll become an entirely different person again. I really freaking hope not. It's all incredibly strange and I can't explain it and it still freaks me out. It seems to make psychologists uncomfortable, so I've largely just dropped it at this point, but I obviously still think about it all the time. Boy golly, if you have any theories, I'd love to hear them. Case file number 1935, written by Hervarar Saga. Copenhagen Dreams, Disappearing Store, or so it seems. Many years ago, I was visiting my friends in another country, Denmark, because they were getting married. I was joined by my mother and her partner. I had to buy a dress for the occasion, so a few days before the wedding, the three of us went shopping on a Straget in Copenhagen. I was really optimistic about finding a dress, but it turned out that most of the shops only had stuff that I didn't like. The colors that were in fashion that summer were rather dull, in my opinion. It started to rain a lot, and we had been walking around for hours, but I finally noticed a store that I had always liked a lot. It's a chain, and me and my mom went in there, while her partner smoked a cigarette under a little vestibule outside of the store. But he was happy to be able to finally have a smoke while we looked around inside. He smoked a lot. I will never forget what we saw inside. The store was full of people, but also the clothes were beautiful. They were almost exclusively in colors that I like. Lots of purple dresses in all shapes and sizes, and skirts that had patterns from gold, purple, and whatnot. I said to my mom that this was definitely what I needed, and I would be buying lots of things. Not just one dress, and she agreed. Even though this shop was mostly for younger women, she saw things that she wanted too. We both had wet hair and clothes from the rain, so we decided to come back again the day after and go straight to the store because we didn't want to be trying stuff on while wet. And we wanted to have lots of time and not leave her partner staying outside for long. Also, this store, unlike the others we had been to that day, was full of people. It was on 2 floors, and we could only see the stairs leading to the top floor, and glimpsed a tiny bit of what was up there. But judging from what was downstairs, we were sure it would be just as great. So we left, went straight home, and I was giddy with excitement about the next day. I don't like buying clothes for myself, and this is the only time I've ever been giddy about clothes shopping. Now, on to the next day. We went straight to the store. It was a bit of a walk from the bus stop, but right away I noticed something was off. It had the same sign outside, so it was definitely the same place. A drugstore I had visited before going in there was still across the street, but there were some things that didn't look the same. I shook off the feeling and went in, really excited, as was my mom, but inside the store, there was nothing but the same dull stuff that was in every other shop that year. Boring clothes, etc. And it looked completely different in every way. I remember my mom's disappointment. She ran up to the woman working there and asked if they had changed everything overnight. She was like, "No, we only bring in new stuff once a week." There was no second floor either. Literally nothing looked the same inside. We had to face the fact that we weren't going to be seeing any of those beautiful clothes again. One other thing that we noticed after coming back outside was that the vestibule that my mom's partner had stood under while smoking in the rain wasn't there anymore. I have often wondered about this, and me and my mom used to talk about it a lot, and she was sad about it for years. She's really into clothes. It's probably the only time me and her bonded over clothes. And I wonder what would have happened if we had bought anything there. And is this stuff like possibly happening more than we think? I've only ever heard of one similar story where a guy working in Iran went to a really nice diner in a mountain village that was on the second floor above a gas station. Everyone he worked with said he was making it up because it made no sense that a fancy diner would be operating in such a remote place. But he took them there one day, really excited to show them that he was right. And then, when they get to this particular village, which looked the same as most others in the area, everything just looks as he remembers. The same gas station is there, but there's no second floor. He remembered it being the best dinner he had ever had, and so cheap that he couldn't believe it. I can still vividly remember the interior of the store, the beautiful colors I saw that day. I would describe them as dreamy. Another thing that made this store different from all the others was that it was full of people. There are lots of clothes stores on Stroget, and none of them had been particularly busy that day. Far from it even. Then why would this one have been so crowded and full? Anyway, this is one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me. I was making a list of stuff like this while watching the TV show Dark with my husband. He thinks strange stuff is always happening to me, but he agreed that this was probably the strangest, and the fact that my mother experienced it too. And her partner, who doesn't believe in anything supernatural, makes it impossible to deny. Case file number 1936, written by Professional Tower 76, From the Deck of Dreams to Celestial Beams. I was standing on the deck of a sailboat, stone cold sober, head tilted up towards the heavens, watching both the sail I was trimming and shooting stars in an incredible night sky at about 3 a.m. I was a member of the crew on a vessel that was part of a 300-boat race from Chicago to Mackinac Island. The fastest boats in this 333-mile race finish in around 30 hours, the slowest around 60. So everyone sails through the night, and boats generally have 2 crews who work in shifts to keep fresh. By the middle of that first night, you are so far from Chicago and north of Milwaukee that the sky turns black with no light pollution of any kind. If the night is clear, as this one was, the sky becomes an absolutely awesome canvas of celestial beauty. The first time I witnessed this is the first time I became aware that the night sky is alive with activity. Not like the static picture seen from most places dotted with lights associated with human beings. Most crew members are intensely focused on a particular job on the deck, with one exception. When you are headed downwind and flying a spinnaker, the big round sail in front, one crew member is charged with trimming that beast, also known as a chute, which requires staring nearly straight up at the top edge of the sail and making adjustments as needed. It can be a tough job, due mostly to keeping your head at that angle and maintaining a laser focus. I liked it because you were also staring at that incredible celestial canvas, which was often filled with shooting stars. This night was no exception, shooting stars every 10 minutes or so. I would scream, "Wow!" at each one, and the other crew members would laugh at my giddiness. It was fantastic. Then one particular prominent shooting star streamed in front of my right. as if intentionally placed in my field of view, so I didn't even have to move my head to get a crystal clear view of it. All the others fizzled out pretty quickly, but not this one. This one came to a sudden stop to the right of the sail edge that had my attention until that moment. I stared in disbelief for a few moments, assumed my laser-focused eyes had somehow played a trick on me. But there was this star, much brighter than those around it, just sitting there after streaking in. As I stared for a few more moments, trying to make sense of this, an equally bright red star suddenly appeared right next to it, like they were almost attached. I flexed my knees a little more, deeply in disbelief, staring, unable to speak. And after a few more moments, the tandem moved together, forming a very big Z pattern in the sky, very quickly, in about a second or two, and then disappeared. I stood for about a minute in stunned silence, deep breathing to regain my composure, and hearing a very strange kind of communication in my head that said, "Relax, it's okay, you're okay, and there's no need to make a big deal about this. You're fine. Just keep doing your job." It's hard to explain where this voice came from. It wasn't mine trying to calm myself down. It felt as if it came from the stars, as weird as that sounds. But it worked, and I was super calm after hearing it. I didn't share the story with another crew member until we finished the race the next day, over a hamburger on Mackinac Island. Case file number 1937, written by Garway Moon. From Missing 411 to Boots on the Run. This is about my boots, which took themselves off for a walking tour and then came back. About 2 years ago, my husband and I went on a driving holiday around Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming. We are interested in out-of-the-way sights and geology, and I'm interested in high strangeness, and especially the missing 411 cases. On our way through Colorado, we stopped off at a mom-and-pop store similar to a Tractor Supply, where my husband browsed happily in the sporting goods section, and I wandered around till I found myself in the boots aisle. One pair jumped out to me, a low-cut Ariat with American flags sewn into the leather. I treated myself to them. Once home again, they went into the section of my closet where boots live. I wore them a couple times, put them back where I took them from, and so on. I'm pretty fussy about my footwear. Last year, around July 4th, I went to grab them to wear them at the local parade, and they were just not there. Thinking I'd left them somewhere, I checked our trucks, nothing. Checked all the other house closets, nothing. Really frustrated, I pulled everything out of my closet, looked in all the shoeboxes and all the containers. Still nothing. I gave up at that point, but I never forgot, and it always bugged the hell out of me. Where were they? We recently went to visit friends in the South for a week. I found another pair of boots I liked, and when I went to pay for them, I told my friend and the lady at the desk a brief version of this story, saying, "You wait, I'll buy these, and the others will turn up." We get home from the airport, and it takes me a few days to get around to unpacking my suitcase. I open my closet to put the suitcase away, and my original flagged Ariats are standing, neatly paired up, in the center of the clear space where my suitcase usually stands. No sensible explanation for this at all, except that my boots walked off and then came back. Case file number 1938, written by Moni Nina. A smashed van, then not. What a strange plot. So, I'm driving down I-5S towards San Diego on a busy weekend, back home around 8 p.m. I'm in the left carpool lane and see cars in front of me slowing down, and I realize there's potentially an accident, which isn't uncommon. We approach the accident and realize the white van is totaled, with smoke visible, and the van looks like an accordion smashed in together. We see no cops and decide to call 911 in case the passengers have been unable to. Overall, we drove slowly and we couldn't see the passengers, but the state of the vehicle prompted my partner to make the call. We provided location information, and I decided to exit as quickly as possible and go back to check and see if they needed help. I exit the freeway and circle back. No more than 7 minutes have gone by, and as we once again approach the accident, the queue of cars is longer, but we finally see the white van at a short distance. As I approach the vehicle, now I see 2 young men outside the van, changing what looks like a tire. The van has no accident marks, it's whole. It's no longer like an accordion smashed together. It's solid, and there's no smoke. Both my partner and I looked at each other, confused, and started to discuss what the hell just happened when the van was smashed in and looked so bad that we called 911 and went back to see if they needed help. It was exactly the same van, same color, same location, but no longer a total wreck like it was just a few minutes ago. We didn't stop and kept driving given the change in the van's appearance, and 2 men obviously okay, and just questioned what we had seen the first time, and now what we were realizing in front of us. Given we drove slow in both instances and saw the wreckage the first time, we had a total WTF moment, and immediately nothing made sense. We both agreed that we did see the wreck, and we both saw the van smashed in. We drove quietly back home after, realized something odd and eerie had just happened with our realities. To this day, I wonder and question if going back changed the situation. If so, I hope at least in the new reality, the passengers made it out alive and uninjured. Likewise, if what we saw did happen, then in another reality, they likely really got injured or worse. Case file number 1939, written by Anonymous. Driving north with a temporal report. Me and a buddy were driving home late one night from an NBA game. We lived about 45 minutes from the arena downtown. We are driving northbound on the freeway in heavy traffic for about 15 minutes. And next thing we know, we are several cities north of our hometown, not another car in sight, and only 15 minutes have passed. We look at each other at the same time when we realize we've gone way too far, look down at the clock in the car, and realize only 15 minutes have passed. Remember, a drive home should have taken 45 to 60 minutes, and we are at least 30 minutes past our hometown the other way, and we both started losing our damn minds. We turned around and drove back south, towards home. Nothing strange happened. It took the 30 minutes it should have to get home. To this day, everyone we tell about this story tells us we are lying, or trying to pull some kind of a joke. Sure, we could have been distracted by the radio, or talking too much, where you forget what happens. But the time issue. It only took us 15 minutes to get somewhere where it should have taken at least an hour. I truly believe between the last thing we remembered and when we realized where we were, we entered some kind of time warp. I hope no one thinks we're crazy. Case file number 1940, written by Tramp Stamp Champ. Gold by day, UFO by night, peppered with a cosmic fright. My girlfriend and I were up in New Hampshire, gold panning with her sister and brother-in-law. We got back to the condo and went outside to try to see the comet Neowise. We had no luck the first night. My girlfriend's family left the next day, so it was just the 2 of us there. We were outside, trying to see the comet at around 9:30. It was great. We saw Saturn and Jupiter ride together over the mountains. We saw satellites flying by, and we even saw a couple shooting stars, but no Neowise. We decided a while later, around 11, that we were going to go look for the comet again. We had been looking at the sky for a long time when we finally saw what we thought was a comet, straight below the Big Dipper. So we went back to the condo because I had remembered that we had a pair of binoculars. I grabbed them and we went back to the stargazing spot. Now, the binoculars only had one lens, so the image wasn't very clear, but it still magnified it enough to where we could tell that we were definitely seeing Neowise. It was incredible. This is where it gets weird. After looking at the comet, we were looking at the rest of the sky when we saw what looked like a blinking light in the sky, and it was moving all over the place. It definitely wasn't a satellite because satellites move in straight lines. This thing was going in every direction, making turns and doing like corkscrews all over the night sky. When I looked through the binoculars, I could see that the object wasn't actually blinking, but that the light appeared to be on one side of it, and it was constantly rotating so the source of light would either face towards us or away from us. When the light was pointing directly at us, it was the brightest thing in the sky. Even when it turned away from us, I could still see it through the binoculars as this small dark spot. We watched this thing fly through the sky for as long as we could, until we couldn't see it anymore. What we saw was a UFO. I don't know what the hell it was, but that night has stuck with me. Case file number 1941, written by Marsh Cranberry. 5 blocks away was Mike, who vanished that day. Okay, so it was the first day of kindergarten, and I lived about 5 blocks from school. But I lived on the bottom of the hill, where the school was on top. You could pretty much see the house from the door to the school. My mother was not great. Like lost custody about a year later, not great. Anyway, that morning she gets all drunk and is like, "I'll watch you go to school from here. Then, when school is over, I'll wait outside and you can just walk home." I was like, okay, I'm 5. So I went to school, did my thing. When the day was over, this lady was assigning other kids to walking routes. She was like, "You will go on this route." And I was like, "No, my mom is waiting for me right down the street." And she was like, "No, you will go with this team here." And I got mad. I had a hell of a temper too, as I screamed that my mom was waiting and she would be mad if I took a route the woman was like, "You need someone to go with you." This slightly older kid said, "I'm Mike, I'll take you home, it's on the way to my house." And we took off. Right away, I see my mom isn't waiting on the porch for me, which was to be expected. About 3 blocks down, Mike was like, "I live like 2 blocks down this street. You see your house, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's like 2 blocks away." So he takes off. 1 block away from home, this van rolls up. "Hey kid, you need a ride?" I didn't pay much attention. I was like, "My mom is waiting for me." And he was like, "Your mom told me to pick you up." Now the fact that my mom wasn't waiting on the porch like she said she would, told me, okay, she is partying at the friend's house, I'll just hop in. This is when I heard Mike's voice behind me say, "Hey, you get out of here." And the dude looked super freaked out, like from friendly smile to frightened, and he took off fast. I turned to Mike, who I had heard yell super loud a second before. I swear, he was right behind me, and no one was there. No one at all. I went back half a block and he wasn't there, and didn't see him the last block home either. The next day, when I got to school, the woman who was assigning routes the day before took me to the office because I had skipped on my route. She was all mad like I ran off without a route. Apparently kids need to have routes. And was like, "Mike took me." And she was like, "Who is Mike?" And I was like, "The kid who walked with me?" And she was pissed, because that's like a law thing. So we went to every Mike in 3rd, 4th, 5th grades, and it was none of them. I never did see that Mike again. Case file number 1942, written by T.S. Epsilon. Nighttime scene, strangers keen, and a gruesome mien. When I was in high school, my mom was driving me home from a choir concert when we saw a homeless man get hit by a car. She stopped to help and grabbed a blanket from the trunk to cover him with. I stayed in the car. Eventually, we were released when the authorities showed up and she gave a statement. So we went home, but we left the blanket. A couple of hours later, the doorbell rings. It's 2 complete strangers. I have never seen these people before in my life. They have our blanket, now splattered with blood. The guy didn't make it. and they casually greet me by my name, claiming to know me from school. They said they'd seen that it was our blanket, so they came to give it back. 1. They looked a little old for high schoolers, sort of like people who play high schoolers in Hollywood. 2. I would swear on my life that I had never seen them before. No shared classes, nothing. And it's not like I was a school celeb or anything. I mostly kept to myself. 3. It was nighttime, and I didn't leave the car. 4. Even if I can somehow get the others to make sense through weird coincidences, how did they know my address? Not really knowing what to do at the moment, I thanked them. Both parents looked at me like, who are these people? And accepted the bloody blanket. They left, we got rid of the blanket, and although I kept an eye out at school, I never saw those two again. Case file number 1943. Written by Kuratoan 178. 2 orders, 2 quips, 21 pilot trips. I'm a barista at a coffee shop, and the shift I had a couple days ago threw me for a loop. So, I was taking an order from these 2 gentlemen at our walk-up window. The first guy ordered a drink, and I asked if he wanted whipped cream on it. He said, "Nah, that's okay. I'm sweet enough already." Now, I've worked here for 5 years, and I've heard many quips, but I hadn't heard that one before, so it stuck out in my mind. I laughed and took his friend's order. For context, we have speakers inside the building and outside that we can Bluetooth music through. And I'm a big 21 Pilots fan, so that was what was playing. The second guy asked me, "Did you guys pick this music?" As opposed to a corporate office handpicking playlist for us or whatever. I said yes, and he mentioned that he was a big fan of the band also. Let it be known that I was wearing a band tee of theirs, but he didn't comment on it. I don't know if he realized it was or what. Now, here's where it gets kinda weird. Not 30 minutes later, I'm outside taking orders in our drive-thru. One car has 2 guys in it, and the driver orders a drink. I ask if he wants whipped cream. He says, "Nah, I'm sweet enough already." And I laugh it off in my head, but I'm thinking how weird of a comment that is to have 2 separate customers say within less than an hour. No hesitation. This guy gestures to my shirt and says, "Oh, 21 Pilots, right? Big fan myself." Again, I laugh it off and talk about the band with him, but inside I was like, what? These 3 guys were all different age demographics too. Case file number 1944, written by Hyper45 New. City chills, library thrills, and escalating spills. I was out with a group of friends, just chilling around the city. Someone decided that we should head on over to the library and just loiter there for a little while. Once we got there, I noticed this one guy stood out and got the feeling he was eyeballing me. So I said I was going to the bathroom really quickly. So when I got to the bathroom, the guy was already there, even though I hadn't seen him move from the spot he was sitting at. He was just waiting by the door. So I backed out of there as quickly as possible. When I got to my group again, I suggested that we should go eat somewhere, just so I could leave the library. When we started to head out, I saw the guy outside still staring at me, or maybe us, I don't know. And at that point, I knew something was wrong. When we got to a place to eat, I pulled one of my friends aside and told him about the guy. He didn't seem that worried at first, but when I asked him if he could lead me home, he started to ask questions. For context, I'm not someone who tends to ask someone to help me home. I can take care of myself. There was just something really sketchy about the guy. So when we get done eating, me and the friend begin to head home. And on the metro, I see the guy again, still staring. I point him out to my friend and he gets worried. At this point, I realize that I still haven't even thought about calling the police. So we get off on a very crowded platform and I call the police for the first time in my life. He's still there. We keep an eye on him just in case. And when the police showed up, we took our eyes off him for a few seconds and pointed to where he was just moments ago. Surprise, surprise, he's gone, not a trace. The police could tell I was shook and asked questions, like what he looked like and such. I gave them the best description I could, and so did my friend. The police told us they could give us a ride home if we wanted to, and I don't think I've ever given a faster yes in my life. I don't think I was hallucinating, as my friends saw him as well. I still look over my shoulder whenever I go outside. Case file number 1945, written by Barry Neary. In a cafe of rock, fate decided to play, and it wouldn't decay. A few years back, when I was in my early 20s, I was working in a hard rock cafe. I'm behind the till in the shop, and a Sri Lankan family comes in. It's an adult couple, their children, and a frail-looking elderly man. The older man looks straight at me when he comes in, and I felt an intense moment of deep connection, as if I'd known him for years. He immediately turned on his heels and left. The other adults looked troubled and followed him out, and I could see them out of the window. He was nodding and waving his hands. A few minutes later, they come back in, and the elderly man comes up to the till and smiles at me, looking as if he was about to cry. I greet him with my best customer service voice, but there's such a pit in my stomach. I ask if he needs any help, and he kind of shakes himself and literally turns and picks up the first thing he sees. It's just a random keychain. I put it through the till, and he just maintains eye contact with me with this sad smile. He thanks me in a small voice. As they're leaving, he turns at the door, gives me this one last lingering look, and then they leave. Against all logic and reason, I felt like I knew that in my past life, he was my husband. I don't even believe in reincarnation. I haven't told anyone about this because it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I felt like an entire life flashed before my eyes. It was probably all in my head, but it's been many years, and it has stayed with me. Case file number 1946, written by McGriddles44. A heartfelt quest, a touching tale that left me blessed. I like to play disc golf as a hobby. I ended up finding a pretty cool custom-dyed disc in some brush on hole 2 of a course I had never played at before. It wasn't the type of driver I used very often, so it just sat in my bag for a couple months, until I figured I'd go sell this seldom used disc to clear out some room in the bag to get a few extra bucks. I went to my local dynamic disc store to sell the disc, and usually there are only 1 or 2 guys working the shop at a time, but this time there were like 10 dudes in the back office and they were all talking with each other. I handed over the disc to the employee, who came out to help me. As soon as he laid eyes on this disc, he froze and asked how I got it. I told him, and dumbfounded, he takes the disc to show the group of guys in the office, and they all have the same weirdness. Just saw a ghost look. Turns out, the original owner of the disc was one of their good friends, and had passed away that week, and all those guys were there because they had just left his funeral. We're about to go out and play around together to celebrate his life. Seemed to be a bit beyond sheer coincidence, but wow, I felt so touched and happy to be able to give them back a piece of their friend they had just lost recently. I still get goosebumps when I relive that moment. Case file number 1947, written by Annalidim. A familiar ride, yet my boyfriend's presence could not be denied. It honestly freaked me out so bad that I didn't want to write it out for a while. Some background. I live in a college house, owned by the college and close to campus, with 2 of my friends, but my boyfriend has been a sort of unofficial 4th housemate for a while now. He's good friends with many of my friends, and especially the ones who live in the house, so it's safe to say they know him and what he looks like extremely well. This is important later. Our house is directly next to a big parking lot, which is fully lit with streetlights at night, like a grocery store or a mall parking lot that belongs to one of our college sports facilities, and it's completely empty about 80% of the time, unless there's a game or practice. This is where my boyfriend and any friends who come to visit will park when they come over. The night this happened, my boyfriend was at his fraternity house for an event, but was planning to come over to our house afterwards. Just me and one other friend were awake and both sitting together on our front porch talking, not drinking or anything of the sort, when we saw my boyfriend's car coming down the road, parallel to our house and the parking lot. It's also important to note that my boyfriend has a very distinct car. Foreign car, outside modifications, unusual color. And we live in a relatively small town where I have still to this day never seen anyone with the same car. I wasn't sure for a second that it was him, as he usually calls me on his way home from almost anywhere. And he hadn't done that. But as his car got closer and started to turn into the parking lot, I was absolutely certain it was him. Like I said, the lot is fully lit up at night, so not only did I see the car in full light, but I could see through the window enough to see that it was him. We thought so much so that it was him that my friend and I got up and started walking to the lot to greet him. She got over there just a moment sooner than me and waved at him as he was pulling in, but he only looked at her and just kept driving through to the other side of the lot. As it would be in character, we thought surely he was messing around with us and was going to turn around, but we watched as he pulled out of the parking lot fully and drove down the road in the opposite direction he came. I called him immediately, thought maybe he left something at the fraternity house, or was just doing a really elaborate and now slightly annoying bit. But I'm telling you, my jaw dropped when he answered, and I could hear from the background that he was still at the frat house. Music, people talking, even though I could still see his car driving down the road. I asked him if he had just been home and left for some reason. He said he hadn't, but he was probably going to leave soon. He asked why, and I just told him I'd explain later and hung up. My friend was so freaked out, she didn't want to talk about it, and she still doesn't like when I bring it up. We both saw him, but she definitely got a better look, and swears on everything it was him driving. Hell, I know for absolute sure it was his car. We've had a few other weird experiences in this house that oddly enough center around my boyfriend. It's hard to tell if it's more paranormal or a glitch in the Matrix, but this one absolutely felt like a glitch, especially considering that him coming down our road and turning into that parking lot is a routine thing that happens at least 10 times a week. Guess the universe was just ahead by a few minutes that night. Played the track of my boyfriend coming home too early. Case file number 1948, written by B. Sinister. In the blink of an eye, the Christmas mystery that made me sigh. Around Christmas 2023, I had put my son down for a nap in his playpen in the playroom downstairs. I went into the living room, sat on my couch, and started watching The Office on TV and folded laundry. When I was finished, I pulled my blanket over me and laid down on the pillow my son had brought into the living room earlier that morning. I dozed off soon after. A short time later, I woke up to my baby crying. I remember looking out of the window and wondering how long I'd been asleep because it was dark outside. I checked my phone that was plugged into the charger on the arm of the couch for the time. It was almost 7. I specifically remember looking at the Christmas tree as I walked by. I walked back to the playroom, change his diaper, walk into the kitchen to throw away the diaper, and make him a bottle. After I gave him his bottle, I walked back into the living room to lay back down on the couch. But my pillow and blanket were gone. The laundry was still folded beside, but the couch looked untouched. Even my phone was gone. I looked in all the rooms I'd gone in, and even the bathroom, and thought it must have fallen on the couch. Around that time, my boyfriend was getting home from work, and I asked him to call my phone, because I couldn't find it. I heard it ringing upstairs in our bedroom. I hadn't been upstairs at all, and was freaked out by this point. Me and my boyfriend went up to our bedroom to find my phone, plugged up to the charger beside my bed, and on the bed was my blanket and pillow. As if I was asleep in my bed the whole time. I was so confused because I know for a fact I never walked up or down those stairs, and the TV in the living room was still on The Office. I still think about this all the time, and I can't make any sense of it. Case file number 1949, written by I. M. Bia. driving through time with a vision of my father's old ride. I was driving back from a friend's, and my dad drove past me in the car we owned 20 years ago, with the crack in the windshield. He tried to swap a fly and his ring got caught in the glass wrong when I was 9. Wearing a lambskin jacket and farmer's flat cap he used to live in and lost when we moved house. This was when I was 11. There were 2 kids in the back who were about the right age and hair color to have been me and my little brother 20 plus years ago. Absolutely no mistaking it was him. I'd stopped to let him through a bottleneck in the road. My dad has significant and very distinctive facial scarring from an accident and subsequent facial reconstruction when I was 3. I was really rattled and had to pull over for a bit. I almost wish I'd followed the car instead of just pulling off the road and having a cigarette. But I was shaking and wouldn't have been safe driving. After my fag, I called my stepmom, asked where he was. He was on the couch at his flat, at least 2 hours drive away. This is absolutely breaking my brain. Did we time travel as kids coming back from visiting family? Is there a random Terran space in the middle of a random Yorkshire village? I have absolutely no explanation, and I absolutely know it was him or us. Have I altered something by driving past myself? Am I going mad? Case file number 1950, written by I Heart Star Trek. Numerology shock, 2 books in flock. I moved to Edmonton and brought all my books with me because I'm that person. I have an old vintage numerology book that I bought at a used bookstore in Kingston. That had a weird mark in the top corner of the first page, like a scribble. It's from like 1940, so not in print and very loved by past owners. Okay, so when I moved alone, packed my own stuff from my apartment where I lived alone, and unpacked alone in a new one in Edmonton. I finished getting my books up on the shelf and take one with me to the bathroom, choosing the numerology one. Yes, I was poop reading. Time passes and I leave the washroom and go to put it back on the shelf. But the book is already there, on the shelf, where the other one in my hand had been. It's literally a copy of the exact same book. It has a mark in the corner, but it's the exact same book. I still have them both. It's insane. I lent one copy to a friend, and she destroyed the other dust jacket. But whatever. The entire thing shook me to the core. I told my friends about it, and they were freaked out, either thinking I was crazy or how crazy it was. There is no way I'd have 2 copies of this book, and there is no way I would have packed and unpacked 2 copies, because it is so unique. It has a section that describes what type of person you are based on the day of the month you were born. For example, born on the 5th, born on the 18th, etc. Literal duplicate time-foldy numerology book. Case file number 1951, written by Varese Bloodwing. Routine to ridiculous. The eyedrop price mystique. Have you ever bought a specific product on a routine, say every month? If so, you will understand why this weirded me out. Now, I used to work at this store, and so I know they kept strict inventory, and have a good online inventory system, which is why this is all the more weird to me. I go to buy eye drops that I have bought now for several months. They are an organic brand of glycerin eye drops for $5.99. Well, that day when I went to buy them, they were $24.99. Yep. So I cracked a joke about inflation to the employee working in the wellness department, where these eye drops were kept at my local co-op market, and she responds with, "Oh, wow, that is awfully high. That can't be right." I explain what I explained to y'all. I buy these every month, each month. They are $5.99. She explains the price increased last March. I said, "Yes, but I bought them like 3 weeks ago. I'm running out. They were $5.99. I'm positive they're the same ones, same box, same brand, etc. She looks into the computer system and they show $24.99. She even takes them up to the cash register, $24.99. She proceeds to say she'll go speak with the buyer. but I have a hot bar food and need to go before it gets cold as I'm bringing lunch to a friend. So I leave her with this bit of information because nothing at this point is making sense. Well, the only thing I can rationally think of is that someone intentionally or accidentally put them under another brand of eye drops that's $5.99. Like manually changing something in the system so they rag up multiple times as $5.99. She responds that it's impossible to do that. Basically, she explains that whatever the price is in the book is already electronically in their computer, and so whatever that price is corresponds to the barcode and so on. There is literally no way to change it because the prices are locked in their system, and if anything is on sale, it will have a sticker over the barcode. The cashier then has to manually put in the price and note the item code. Essentially, the computer system I recall got even better for buying and receiving. So all in all, there is no way anyone could have just made those eye drops $5.99 for the several months I was buying them. There is no explanation at all. Each code matches the eye drops and the price is $24.99. They are truly the same barcode and everything of the eye drops. I bought them from that store multiple times as well, and I was not charged $24.99. I watch every item get scanned and have a fixed income, so no, I did not buy them at that price. I even confirmed online that they are in fact $24.99 to $29.99. Yes, a 0.03 milliliter bottle of just basic organic glycerin eye drops. Glycerin doth not be that freaking pricey. So now I'm doing the math, and that means for like 5 months I've gotten $24.99 eye drops for $5.99, and everyone in the wellness department just thinks I'm crazy. So something in the Matrix was ringing those eye drops for me at a massive discount. One day, when I'm no longer freaked out, I'm going to try buying them again and see if they ring up for $6 for me. Case file number 1952, written by Deader is Better. Desert highway's strange display. Signs pointing the wrong way. I did some growing up outside of Phoenix in a small town 2 hours south. I loathed living there, and between that and my girlfriend leaving, I had had too much and decided to literally pick up and go. This was 2002. Everything I owned was thrown into a garbage bag and tossed into my truck. I emptied my whole apartment and packed within a few hours. By 9 p.m. I was on the road to Phoenix. I need to elaborate on the journey. The drive, if one isn't speeding, is about 2.5 hours, and it's a trip I'd made so often I could practically close my eyes and make it. It's a boring drive up out of the valley the town is in, down the other side of a mountain, and finally coasting 2 hours one way through flat, desolate desert. It got weird real damn fast. I gassed up, got through town real quick, and started up the mountain pass. I was really 19 and really excited. Once you got up on the mountain, it was kind of like a hello to all the country in front of you, and goodbye to everything behind. I sailed down the mountain and proceeded into Act 2, which was a long, boring part. I had a tape player in my old truck, and I was maxing volume on the Ramones tape, keeping watch on the green highway signs that told you how many miles the towns in front and behind are. That was the way I always battled highway hypnosis. The first sign read something like, Phoenix, 170 miles. Another small chunk of time passed into the night before I saw another sign, Phoenix, 155 miles. When my high beams revealed the next one, it was a little sooner, Phoenix, 143 miles. But I swear the next sign that rendered out of the dark desert was a town I'm from. For the purpose of this, we'll call it Town X. Town X, 30 miles. I couldn't understand why it would show the town behind me on a 2-lane one-way highway. The next sign said Town X 25 miles. WTF. When the next sign came up and said Town X 15 miles, I didn't hesitate. I just had a really bad feeling, so I yanked my steering wheel left. I drove over the shoulder and into the pure desert median. The jostling shook me until I was able to complete my giant U-turn, landing on the other 2 lanes and hauling butt. 2 hours later, I was in Phoenix. Doesn't make any sense. The only thing I can think is maybe I turned off the highway and drove around into other lanes, but anyone who has driven through the desert will tell you just how impossible it is to complete that without noticing. Case file number 1953, written by Taint Master 900. August to October, the store's puzzling makeover. I used to live in an apartment near a corner store on the edge of town. I was very familiar with it and went there often. It was closed down a few months after I moved somewhere about a mile away. I remember because it was still the closest store to where I lived. I remember my roommate telling me the store closed down. I was disappointed because now we had to walk a little bit further down that road to the next gas station to get snacks and beer. It was July. I even saw all that equipment from the inside of the store was lined up outside to be taken away or something. It was about August when I walked past it again. It was rubble. I could now see the buildings behind the store, and I remember thinking about that being the closest public restroom to my house too. I continued on past what used to be the corner store to the next one down the road. I saw a friend of mine the same day, and I told him that they tore down the old store too. I didn't walk that way for a couple months after that. Now we're in October. When I did, I was very shocked and confused when I saw the building still there in its original condition. There's no way I could have mistaken it for another building. Nothing else in the area was torn down or rebuilt. I got kinda mad, honestly, because of how blatant of a change that is. I decided not to ask my friend if they remember me telling them about the store being rubble, because I really don't want to know the answer. Case file number 1954, written by Walking Not Too Fast. The barbershop scene where reality shifts like something unseen. So I live in a city, me and my wife sell stuff online, and every morning I have to walk to the drop-off office. On my way to and from that place, I pass in front of a barber shop. One of those modern places where everything is so very manly. Anyway, like a year ago, I went there for a haircut. I had visited the place like 3 times before, and I was okay with the result, so I kept going. One time, I had a very upsetting interaction with one of the guys there. He cut my hair and kept asking me a bunch of weird questions. If I had tried drugs, where did I live, how many children, and a bunch of personal info. I obviously gave him nothing, but it was so awful that every time I passed in front of the place, I looked inside to see if the guy was still there. It became a habit to look inside every day. Like 9 months ago, I looked inside and everything was uninstalled. Mirrors, workstations, the counter, TV furniture, everything. They were moving out. The whole place was chaos. I didn't think much of it. Maybe the business wasn't good enough. It happens. So next day, I take my usual path and lo and behold, the barber shop is up and running. Like every other day, no sign of anything. It bugged me for months. I thought about it every time I took that path. There's no way they put everything back in place in less than 18 hours. So last week, the place was being moved for real, and I saw again exactly what I saw 10 months ago. Only this time it really happened. They closed the barber shop. Case file number 1955, written by Helpful Name. In the storm's light stood terrors in the night. 14 years ago, we were house and dog sitting for the summer for a friend who'd gone out of the country and didn't want to leave their place empty or put the dog in a kennel for 2 months. One night there was a truly phenomenal thunderstorm. The lightning was so constant that instead of being dark, everything was lit with this eerie, flickering blue-white light with the occasional purple flashes. The air was rumbling, the thunder was so active. The warm rain fell so thickly that you couldn't see the other side of the street, which was now a little river, probably an inch or so deep. It was like being on an alien planet. We were mesmerized, and because it was so warm, we went and sat outside on the covered front porch. Suddenly, my boyfriend said, "Is someone out there?" and nudged me to look down the street. It looked like the shadowy, distinct figure of a person weaving around in the middle of the street. As we watched, the person came closer and closer down the street, but we quickly realized there was actually no one there. It was a roughly person-shaped hole in the rain. My boyfriend was gripping my arm tightly by now, and we were frozen, watching. You could see the falling rain stopping, as if hitting a body. There were sprays flying off in directions rain was not falling in, and stompy splashes in the rain flowing down the street. Just like you'd see if someone was stamping their foot on a puddle. But there was no one there. It was like watching the invisible man. It was now right in front of our house. There was a clear rhythm to the movements, and it became clear this figure seemed to be dancing in the rain. We were both terrified and fascinated, but there was this weird feeling of danger too. We were barely breathing, and my boyfriend whispered right in my ear, "It can't notice us." There was a super bright lightning flash just then, one so bright it left us blinking and seeing purple for a moment. The figure stopped dancing and was standing before the house, and we both got this horrible feeling it was looking at us. Then the movement started up again, slower now. It made its way up the short driveway and onto the lawn in front of the porch where it slowed to a stop. My boyfriend's grip on my arm was painful at this point, and I could feel him winding up to make a lunge for the door to try and get us inside. Suddenly, the dog started barking aggressively and loudly in a way we'd never heard it bark before. And then it started throwing itself at the door. The thing on the lawn jumped backwards and then ran away across the grass, down the drive and then down the street, as if it was running away. We jumped up and ran into the house, locking the door behind us and calming the dog down, who was beside himself and insisted on smelling us all over for some time before his hackles would go down. To this day, I have no idea what we could have seen. We've talked about it many times. Every rainstorm now, we spend a bit of time looking out the windows. We live about 15 minutes drive from there now. We've never seen anything similar since. Case file number 1956, written by I Burn Gaze 808. Banging lore and dogs encore. A Saturday night to explore. Just a Saturday night, I was watching TV home alone with my two dogs, when I heard a banging sound coming from the basement. Legit sounded like somebody was just banging something on the appliances we had down there. Now, there was no access into the basement from down there, only through the upstairs rooms that I was in, and knew nobody could have come in and got past me. So with this knowledge, I was not as scared as you may think, more curious as to what the heck the noise was. One of the two dogs, who is a meathead and wants to fight everybody, also heard the noise, and was now boiling down into the basement to investigate. I get down and see that it is my other dog, banging his head into our dryer and chest freezer, which are next to each other. My meathead dog just stood there watching confused, so I approach my other dog and calm him down, and we all go back upstairs. Now this freaked the heck out of me and upset me, as it seemed such very strange behavior for my dog to do. Fast forward only 30 minutes or so, the banging starts again. I instantly look over to my dog, but he is laying down, but now also aware of the noise downstairs. We run down into the basement and there is Meathead, now banging his head in between the appliances. Again, I now calm the Meathead down and we all go back upstairs. Nothing has ever happened again since that night, 3 years now. So that ruled out brain tumors, which is what I read online about why maybe dogs bang their heads. But two dogs suddenly on the same night, 3 years ago, never happened again. Case file number 1957, written by Till Soil. From science to chi, heat felt by me. I'm a skeptic, atheist, former science researcher, and this remains the most woo-woo thing I have ever personally experienced, and insisted on testing. In Seattle, I met the colleague of a friend. She told me he was a Qigong practitioner. Qi equals a life force said to circulate through all living beings. He was said to manipulate this force. Of course, I asked for a demo. Other friends were there too. Her colleagues and I stood 6 to 8 feet apart, with eyes closed, so I could not see him point. I stretched my hands out to both sides. He said, "Say whether I'm pointing at your left hand or your right hand." Soon I felt one hand get unmistakably hotter. It was a sensation like heat, like a warm glow. No air movement. I said, "Right hand." It was at my direction, with my eyes still closed. He repeated the test several times, switching randomly between right and left hands. I could always tell which hand he was directing chi at without a single guess wrong. Next test, still standing 6 to 8 feet apart, but with me facing him this time so I could see. He pointed his hand towards me, aimed at my neck. Nothing but open air between us in my friend's living room. I started to feel a sense of heat in, not on, my neck. A feeling of fullness, thickness, congestion that made me feel like swallowing, as if a knot of food or something was in my throat. The friends watching grew audibly concerned at this point, which I found interesting by itself, and prevailed on us to stop the test. I went for a walk around the lake later with the guy. He was slender, medium height, Asian or Asian American, late 20s, early 30s, smoked the occasional cigarette. I was astonished to learn that he was in his 50s, but this Qigong test remains the single most inexplicable thing I've ever experienced firsthand. Case file number 1958, written by Jeeves the Runner. The Blue Bikini Girl in Wild Water Swirls. About 10 years ago, a group of friends and I were whitewater kayaking in the Catskills. One of the group and myself were pretty experienced, and had both worked swiftwater rescue. And we had helmets on, rope bags, the works. This was early spring, and the water was high, fast, and cold, and all the rapids had been upgraded. We were all in neoprene suits. We had passed some tubers in wetsuits, most of them college kids. Not uncommon there. Come across a girl who was absolutely freaking out, standing in the shallows in an eddy, no tube in sight. She's screaming that her friend went under and hasn't come back up. My friend and I go help. I stay in the kayak and he flips and pulls up his cord and goes under. Pops back up with a girl in a bright blue bikini. No idea why I remember the color. I throw him a rope bag. This girl is messed up, bleeding down her face, pale, blue lips, the works. The rest of my group had flagged down a truck. We were in the middle of nowhere, no cell service or anything. Put this girl in a bikini and her friend in the back and sent them to the hospital. We got the name and number of the guy in the pickup, but not the girl's. Called the guy that night and he's freaking out. Says he got to the hospital and there wasn't anyone in the bed of the truck. No water, no blood, no 2 girls. The towels and the makeshift rope litter we had made were there, and the towels were still wet, but nothing else. Guy swears up and down he remembers seeing them in the mirror right before pulling into the hospital. We called local hospitals, the police, the tour company, and everyone. No one had any idea of who we were talking about, and the tour company swears no one got in the water without a wetsuit, and they hadn't lost any tubes that day. Still think about it whenever I'm up that way. Case file number 1959, written by Blake D. Snake. In a barrack so old was a spirit infinitely cold. I was stationed in Germany from 84 to 86. One night, I had a CQ runner, charge of quarters, basically babysitting duty for the barracks. There were 5 runners, 1 for each of the 4 floors, plus the basement. We switched floors every 4 hours. It was around 2 a.m. and I was stuck with the basement shift. The basement only had offices and storage rooms, no one lived down there. It was damp and musty, what you'd expect from an old World War II era building. Anyways, it's 2ish and I'm walking back and forth, trying to stay awake. I was counting how many steps it was from one end to the other. Yes, I was that bored. I got to one end of the hall, turned around, and there was this guy standing halfway down the hall. The stairwells are at the end of the building, so there's no way he got past me. He's wearing loose work-type pants, boots, and a white loose tank top and undershirt. He was facing away from me, and all I can see is that his hair is cut in a bowl cut, too long for army standards. I was dumbstruck, literally tried to speak but couldn't make a sound. He just stood there and then he was gone. No poof, just a sort of fade out, but quick. I walked upstairs, forcing myself to be calm, and asked if anyone had gone down to the basement. The guy on the first floor was half asleep, but said he hadn't seen a thing. I went back down to the basement, smoked a cigarette, and stared down the corridor. After about 15 minutes, I got brave enough to walk back down. There was no sign of the guy. I had no idea what I saw. I asked a unit historian about it once, describing the guy's clothes and haircut. He said it sounded like a soldier, which makes sense because our barracks were built in 1938. Anyways, it freaked me out. I've never told anyone the whole story before. Case file number 1960, written by Stupid with Monies. A dream of loss and my heart's silent cost. My ex-husband and father of my children passed away earlier this year. We were together for over a decade. About 2 or 3 weeks before he died, I had a dream that his sister called me to tell me that he had passed. I remembered the dream after I woke up. I usually don't, but shook it off as being disturbed by this one, so that's why I retained it. When he passed away from unexpected heart failure on Memorial Day, my ex's sister tried reaching me on Facebook as she lost my number. When she couldn't reach me, she called my daughter. Déjà vu doesn't even begin to touch the feelings I had when I returned her phone call. Standing in the living room, pacing back and forth on the phone just like in my dream. I feel sick thinking about it now. My ex was getting increasingly ill in the week or so leading up to his death. He thought it was a bad cold or pneumonia, COVID, etc. Lethargic, shortness of breath, coughing. No one put 2 and 2 together that really his stint was no longer functioning, and he was going into heart failure. It bothers me that I had that dream. What was the point? How could I have known? Even knowing, what could I have done? I haven't seen the point in sharing with family or friends, or how hearing about it could provide them with any sense of relief or comfort. My mom had something similar happen to her as a girl. She told me that she had a dream that she heard a knock on the door, opened it, and her father collapsed. The next day after school, there was a pounding on the door. She opened it, and her father collapsed at her feet. Turns out he had leukemia. Lived until she was 14. My mom doesn't believe in supernatural things, but can't explain this. Case also file 1915. 2 girls, 1 ride, and names that hide. I'm not entirely sure why, but my gut says, these were your kids from the future. The kids you haven't had yet, but will. But then, were you simply seeing an image, a projection of what they will be? You saw them, but that was just information. They weren't really there. Or did you twist space-time to the extent that they really were there and you really did ride home, but then you reappeared in your timeline when you reach your destination? I guess it doesn't really matter which one. And I could be way off, it's just what my gut is telling me. These children were related to you. Case also found 1916. Blue to green, or just a dream. Okay, so there's a lot of anomalies in this one, and they don't all mesh together. Namely, with the title of the car being blue, but the pictures and most people remembering it as green. It's almost like you're in a new universe, but the title card came with you from the originating universe. Maybe you had it on you when you were ported over, but in that case it wouldn't be quantum immortality. It would be a shifting of your corporeal being, not just your soul, but your physical body, which would mean that in your originating universe, you actually just disappeared, which is another spin on things, but I can't see any other reason why the title card for the car would mention blue, unless it's just a clerical error in this new universe and it was just quantum immortality and it's just your soul that's over here. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could just be an error. The only other thing I can think of is, of course, DOP. So the card disappeared and was replaced by an incorrect version of it, where the title card says blue because it's still the same universe. Maybe that one. But it's such a large object to have disappear. There have been large objects before, but this one is way up there. Imagine it disappeared while you were driving it. You're just driving along the highway going 60, assuming the position of driving, and there's no car, so you just fall to the ground. I don't think that's ever happened, so if there's an observer watching the object, it can't de-render. That's my guess. It's like hard baked into the code of the universe. Case notes are filed 1917. A mother's plea and a daughter's fall. I too believe that those memories you had were real in the sense that they were a possible future that perhaps did already happen and already play out. And this is just a different replay of the scenario. So you can imagine that, you load up an RPG like Baldur's Gate and you have a save file that's at a certain point in time, but you can start a new campaign, and then when you reach that same point, you might have different variables. Things are different because you made different choices. So something along those lines. And also just random luck. Maybe in that universe, your daughter really did hit her head on the oven and require extensive surgery and all that. So I think it was real. Again, real, not necessarily that it happened at the same time, but the memories, the information of it was real. Now time for the joke of the day. I was told to describe myself in one word in a job interview. I said, bad at following simple instructions. Okay, so it's from 1918. Royal Albert Hall's Eldritch Scroll on a Roll. That sounds like a very cool place to rehearse and perform at, so props to all you guys. I'm sure you deserve it. Was it a reenactment from a bunch of spirits? You're talking about a play, performance. If people had died there, maybe they just wanted to reenact a skit, a phenomenon for a person, a real audience member. There's something very wholesome about that. Although, it really stretches the extent of what spirits are able to do, to actually serve you a physical drink. Yeah, spirits, if they're manifested, they can interact with the material world. They don't just phase through things. And that makes sense too, because there's always the question in sci-fi or fantasy where if you have a ghost or someone that's out of phase, but they're on a planet or on a ship, why don't they just fall right through the ship? They can phase through walls, but why not the floor or the crust of the earth? If a ghost just phases through and isn't pushed back by the electromagnetic forces of any given matter, well, they would just fall right through to the center of the earth if they're still bound by gravity. And if they weren't, then the planet would zip away and they would just be left in empty space forever. If spirits are real, then they are bound by gravity, and at least they aren't necessarily implied to always be phasing through matter. Maybe they can, but maybe they have to will it, and so they can still keep their feet planted on the earth. This seems like a manifestation of a few spirits that were just hanging out, maybe bored, and wanted to perform. Pretty cool in that context, I think. Now time for the joke of the day. Why did the cow cross the road? To go to the movies. Okay, so it's from 1919. The game's not over yet, but the outcome's set. Yeah, just robbing the future of its information. The buffered reality. Not always buffered to you. Sometimes your subconscious mind reaches out its tendrils into that future that has already happened and is written in stone. At least to the extent that it's already buffered. Don't know how far that goes. Maybe it's our entire reality. Maybe it's buffered 1,000 years into the future. Or maybe it's only buffered a few days. I don't know. I think it is buffered, but to the extent I don't know. Now, if that theory is true, then yeah, the information's already there. If you just have access to it somehow, I don't know how. If our minds are basically jacked in, Matrix style, to this simulation, then there could be pathways that enable it to retrieve information from other circuits that are, we're all interconnected. If that's the case. We're also connected to the central server, which would play host to all that data, if we're in the replay mode right now. So yeah, just reach out, take that information, and voila, now you know. If you have that future information relayed to you by your subconscious, wouldn't that affect the choices you make then? Because the initial replay wasn't with that. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we start from replay. We can make new choices as we go along, but then that means that the buffered future wouldn't be as reliable. So not everything your future mind pulls from would be valid. Or somehow we make the same choices anyways. Maybe we really don't have free will right now. We just get to experience the replay. But everything else is going along just like dominoes falling on a board. I'm not sure which one it is. Okay, so it's found 1920. From apartment to home. A bra far from home. Why does the ending sound like a horror note? I borrowed your bra, but it didn't fit. Secretly, I'm a witch. Or something to that effect, I don't know. In what version of you did you lend her the bra? Or did she just borrow it one day, come to your apartment without you knowing? That would be a sister-sister violation, if so. But also weird, because why would she even want to borrow your bra when obviously she realizes that it wouldn't fit? It's not like it's a mystery what's going on there in your chest, right? So the size difference would be clear, and somehow she thought it would fit, or it just appeared to her and she thought she'd try it? I don't know. Beyond DOP because of the sister's reaction. Okay, so it's found 1921. A brother's deed, a confession indeed. So let's assume that whatever is being said by the roommate's brother is all true. He didn't just make up the story. And maybe your social security card was never stolen and it really was just in that bag somehow hidden away. Could be possible, but seems unlikely. You would know where you put your social security card. If it was in the safe and it was gone, then yeah, obviously it was stolen. Okay. So then it doesn't even matter what the roommate's brother did. If he really did sell it to these scammers or just toss it in a drain. Either way, how the hell did it come back to your bag 8 years later? There's just no way, unless there's some guardian that's looking out for you. But even then, that doesn't really make sense, because why wait 8 years to bring it back? Was your guardian angel just on holiday or something? I don't know. The only other thing I can think of is really not just a guardian angel, it's just our objects are actually bound to us in the code of the universe. Maybe the social security card was actually in the sewer, but de-rendered and then was restored to you later on when it was corrected. But then it was restored without having all the grime and disgust from being in a sewer. And I mean, it would have degraded by then, right? Especially since in the US, the social security cards are paper, basically, or cotton or something. There's no way it would have been destroyed, even if it was plastic. Like in Canada, it's more plastic, but that wouldn't survive 8 years in a sewer, I don't think. It had to have been restored, or had never been thrown in the sewer. I don't know. This one's tripping me out a bit. Now time for the joke of the day. The nurse hands a man his newborn and says, "I'm sorry, but your wife didn't make it." He responds, "Well then give me the one my wife made." God. Man, I mean, it's almost good that he didn't get it, but he's gonna have to get it. Damn. Case notes file 1922. From storm to song, the drive that felt all wrong. Okay, so the obvious answer is quantum immortality. You're driving, you're sleepy, and by the way, really, be very careful when you're tired. Apparently it's equivalent to driving while drunk. If you're tired enough, you miss enough sleep, just pull over, try to get some rest. Even like a 30-minute nap can make all the difference. Anyways, so you're driving along, you're not all there, you have the eye shut laps where perhaps you crash. Seems like you're isolated, not many cars around, so maybe you just crashed in a ditch or something, or I don't know exactly the passage of the landscape, but so you crash because you were tired, and you both die, and you wake up in a new universe before the crash happened. In that universe, it doesn't happen. You're not as tired. My guess is actually, after this happened, you probably felt more awake. Although you could say, well, it's just the adrenaline spiking because you noticed a song was incorrect and that freaked you out. But then, yeah, you're in a new universe. And the curious thing is the water seeping in. It's almost like you crashed into a puddle of water, maybe in a ditch, and it was raining as a big storm and some water was seeping in. It's almost like your soul was still connected slightly to the originating bodies that were reporting that, yeah, there's water leaking into the car. That's a curious detail. And maybe it relates to if the body in the originating universe isn't too mangled or destroyed, then some information is still being processed by the brain. So maybe your soul transfers a bit before full death. And it makes sense, you'd want that to happen if that's a design feature of the universe, because you don't want to experience your death. Sometimes it happens so fast that you just do. There's not enough time to sever the soul before full death. But in summary, I think quantum immortality combined with a mild connection to the originating physical body in the other universe. Now time for the joke of the day. What do you call a Mexican that lost his car? Carlos. Or Jose, who knows? Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off. Case notes file 1923. Sounds abound, but no one around. So what I'm wondering is, was there evidence in the bathroom that the shower was actually used? Was there moisture on the curtains inside the shower? I'm assuming so. But as we discussed before, I think spirits can truly manifest in reality enough where they could take a shower. They could have water interact with their body. Maybe they wouldn't feel it. I don't know if spirits really can a spirit manifest and start eating food and still have the sensation, the flavors of food interacting in their mouth? Because that's one thing I've always been wondering about. If I die and become a spirit, even if my soul is mostly in a different universe, would I still be partially aware of that echo, the fragment left behind? And if so, I certainly hope that I can still eat food and enjoy it. Because If not, what the hell is the point? Just end my existence. Without food, life is meaningless. Come on now. And I mean, it would be overpowered because I'm guessing if you can eat food as a spirit, you can't get fat as a spirit, right? I don't know. You de-render the food? Where does the food go? I mean, you're not going to use the bathroom as a spirit. Maybe they just don't have the cognizance awareness to even try, because most spirits are just on a loop, on an echo, not really fully aware. So perhaps that's it. They're just not aware enough to even want to try to eat. Because that'd be weird, seeing a spirit eat, and then what happens to the food? Does it actually digest? Are there microbes in there that are processing things? I don't know. That's probably too technical for any sort of answer. Okay, so from 1924. Lectures at Clypeda's Gate. Parallel worlds at a strange rate. I really liked the detail in the story, specific times, and identifying the exact position in space and time. You were both in the same physical place at the same time, but weren't interacting in the same universe. How cool to have such a detailed account of that. And yeah, the real question though, I think, is which one was in the originating universe and which one wasn't. Well, you could probably determine that just by looking at the walls, the paint on the walls. Whichever has the freshest coat, that is the originating universe. So if yours doesn't have a fresh coat, then you were actually in the different universe. Or you could ask your teacher too, assuming this doesn't happen again. Wonder if it's a geographic location, that specific spot is prone to maybe because the membrane there is just thin enough. Does the thinness of the membrane shift position too? Maybe it does. Maybe it's almost like tectonic plates rubbing against each other, causing friction, and at certain points it's almost like an earthquake that you don't feel, but it just enables crossover. That's an interesting thought. Now time for the joke of the day. I have a mathematics joke, but I'm too square to say it. Oh man. I think some people won't get that, and that's okay, because math is nerdy. Okay, so it's from 1925. Between Monday and Wednesday, we vanished away. So my initial impression would have been the same. Oh, Anna's playing a prank on me. That's why she even mentioned that you weren't here the day before. That makes sense, but there's no way she had access to your phone. And of course, checking all the other dates and times, no. You really did skip a day. There's no way Anna has the power of pranking people to that extent, of infiltrating IT departments and changing all the clocks around the world. No, I don't think so. So you lost a day, but it's more that you and your husband went on autopilot. Because again, as you refer to all the points, that your dogs weren't hungry, you weren't hungry, your husband wasn't hungry, you weren't craving cigarettes. So you must have been on autopilot, but you just didn't go into work. Now, what could possess, I think is the right word. What could possess two people to go onto autopilot? And what did you actually do during those days? I don't think it's a case where you vanish from the plane of existence. I think something took over your bodies and suppressed the memories of whatever you did during those days. Or during the day. I mean, assuming you don't have warrants out for your arrest, maybe nothing too nefarious, but still makes you wonder. Was it like a guardian angel that needed a vessel and doesn't have to ask permission? Or maybe did ask permission, you gave it, and the memory of that is suppressed too. Maybe. I certainly like the idea of a guardian angel requiring permission to take over a vessel. That's more moral than otherwise. Caissons from 1926. A time-twisting morning with no warning. Yeah, so a lot of time anomalies this week. And this one is not as grand as the last one, but still. Missing an entire hour, obviously, assuming this has nothing to do with daylight savings, which I'm sure you ruled out, it wasn't the right day for that. So, you just lost an hour. And it appeared to be a localized phenomena that impacted Kelly as well. More space-time warping, but on a larger scale than is typical of any sort of space-time bubble or anything like that. Now time for the joke of the day. I asked my German friend if he knew the square root of 81. He said no. Why would Germans be especially gifted at math? Wait, wasn't Einstein German? But I mean, even then, doesn't mean all Germans are expert mathematicians. Okay, so it's found 1927. Emotional gaze in the exhibit's maze. The first possibility is these are your children from the future, coming back in time. And it seems like it's a deliberate attempt. They knew who you were, they knew why they were there, to see you specifically. Now, the other possibility is not a glitch at all, but simply your real parents. Maybe you're adopted and were never told. And these are your real parents who found out where you worked, who you really were now, which you're not supposed to be able to do, but I'm sure there's ways to find out that information if you give up your child for adoption. I'm sure it happens here and there. But they didn't want to tell you that, so they just came to see you, and that's why they were so emotional. That makes a lot of sense. Normally, a lot of these glitches, the mundane theory doesn't really make sense, but in this case, I actually am leaning towards that. Yeah. Okay, so it's found 1928. In the rush of the brew, scissors turned 2. So I'm just trying to picture lime green covered scissors, the handles. I don't know why, but that's comical to me. Just the color of it, you don't see it much in most instances. Besides on limes, obviously. But yeah, we just have a case of duplication, de-rendering, etc., etc. For whatever the catalyst is, items can vanish, and then perhaps because of the developer in the real world trying to correct the issue, but not realizing the color selection was wrong, so they took scissors from a different universe, brought it over here, and that's how they tried to play it off, but they got the color wrong. Maybe something as simple as that. Now time for the joke of the day. Sheepdog says to farmer, I got all 50 sheep in the pen. Farmer says to dog, but I only have 46 sheep. Sheepdog says to farmer, I know, I rounded them up. Another math pun, yay. Okay, so it's from 1929. Invisible romance without a chance. So you say back in high school and then say I-20 male. I'm assuming you weren't 20 in high school, but you're just 20 now. Anyways. Yeah, we've all been teenagers and done things that aren't exactly good. To lead someone on, pretend you're dating them, etc. Not ideal, but it's almost like a cosmic prank on you, karma, where the universe said, okay, you're going to pretend that you did this? Well, no, you actually did it. Waja, magic spell, and now you've done it. Outside of quantum immortality, you're in a different universe where you did actually date her. But that's a big change. That's a leap that I don't know if I'd make, because again, you're young, there's no clear indication of why you would have died, so it doesn't seem likely it's that, but if it's not quantum immortality, I'm honestly not sure what it would be. Okay, so it's found 1930. A Tale of Two Faces in all the wrong places. Okay, I'll be the first one to say that I got no clue on this one. I mean, if you have a friend that looks like you, obviously you get mistaken all the time, but it's almost like your essences are shifting between each other. And they had Betty B and Batty B, and even Batty B this happens to, when you look nothing alike. And it's not just the face, you know someone by their body, you know someone by their pheromones. I don't think I've ever confused someone to be someone else if I knew them. It's just not possible. Their voice, their aura, their mystique, everyone has a unique identifier. And for some reason, yours is interchangeable with 2 other people. Between all of them, it's like a triangle of superposition. How bizarre. But I don't know what would cause this. I really don't. There's no glitch that I can think of that really fits either, so this is just a mystery. Very strange one to experience, I imagine. Now time for the joke of the day. While applying for Australian citizenship, the officer asked me, do you have a criminal history? And I said, no. Is that still required? That's amazing. Returning to the penal colony. That is one of those things that really does make sense, though. Australia is so hostile that it started off as a penal colony, a prison basically. Makes total sense. That's not a place you really want to go just to visit, to live. But apparently people do. No disrespect to anyone who's Australian. I just, damn, you guys are playing on hardcore. Case notes from 1931. The Nice Young Man in the Blue Suit. This is a well-known phenomena where people who are on the verge of death will start to see figures. Usually, but not always, they'll see a cloaked figure, like the Reaper, the classical Reaper, with the scythe and everything. I don't know if a scythe is reported, but normally they don't see a handsome young man in a blue suit. I wonder, who is making the decision on what the apparition looks like? Is it a sentient being of some sort that has to go to these places and really be there? It's not just some program of the simulation that's running. This would seem to indicate that it is indeed a physical person going there, or a being, a sentient force, and they can choose what they appear as. So, in this case, this one wanted to offer more mercy and not appear as something threatening or terrifying. I'm recalling a prank video where it's just a store, and the store is set up where you go up to the front of the counter to pay like any normal store, but there's a camera recording them, and there's a TV showing the camera angle, so you see yourself being recorded right behind the counter. And what they did is they manipulated the footage, so behind someone, there would just be a man in reality. But on the camera, it showed the Reaper being there, just behind them, with the scythe and everything. The whole thing. The whole shebang. And so when they turn around, they just see an old man with a scythe or a hoe or something, just like a farmer, and he just winks at them. It's like, yeah, I'm the Reaper. I'm here to take you. I'm here to harvest you. They just look back and it's the Reaper again on the screen and like, no, this is not happening. That is a hell of a prank, I have to say. But in this case, it's not a prank. It's just the experience of people near death being comforted by a good Reaper, if you want to call it a Reaper. Okay, so it's found 1932. The night a creature left its mark in the silent dark. Yeah, if you have pets, especially dogs, you know that usually they're the ones that are menacing. They're the alphas in the local area. But if you hear them yelping, you know something bad's going on. Now, whatever this creature was, I don't know. I do think it was real. I do think it's probably some creature we haven't documented, and the world is so big, it's not that unusual to think about. If that's the case, these creatures they keep to themselves in isolation, because there's a lot of humans around, so we would see them eventually at some point. Now, as we keep exploring, and we all have cameras now in our pockets, these creatures will be demystified, but even then, even if we catalog an 8-foot-tall horse thing galloping around, we can know that exists and say it's just a normal big creature, but it doesn't make it any less terrifying to me, at least. The other possibility is this wasn't a creature from this universe, it was an apparition from a different, far-away universe where perhaps humans are not the dominant apex species. That makes a lot of sense too. Okay, so it's found 1933. The vanished week's mire left questions dire. And another time episode, but this one even crazier. We have 1 week vanishing, a day, and an hour. That's amazing. I didn't really try to organize these stories in some sort of time-focused theme, but it just happened that way, and very curious, let's just say that. Losing an entire week, similar to the story of losing a day, where it seems like you didn't vanish from the surface of the planet or phase out. You just went on autopilot and simply either were you, but don't remember, the memory of the week is suppressed for some reason, or you weren't you. You were possessed by a guardian angel, a demon, whatever it might be. Personally, I hope it's not some sort of possession, but it kind of seems to be implying that in many ways because no one's missing you. So they must have interacted with you. You probably still did your job. Whatever exactly happened. This kind of stuff terrifies me. Now time for the joke of the day. 2 hats are on a hat rack. One hat says to the other, "You stay here. I'm gonna go on ahead." Yes, you are. And you're gonna style it up. Okay, so it's found 1934. From bubbly to shy. A life's big why. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in this story, but the first thing I will say is just, even though psychiatrists and psychologists might be not really understand what's going on, I would say defer to their expertise first and foremost. Maybe it is simply a mental problem and it can be fixed. Now, if it hasn't happened again since then, well, you have the fear of it happening again, but that does diminish the probability that is psychological. Won't discount that. Okay, what if, not always, but sometimes, these dissociative episodes or changing of mindset, dual personality, are caused by a quantum immortality transfer into you by a soul that wasn't meant for you. Maybe it wasn't a copy of you in a different universe, but someone else loaded into your body, into your brain. And you have two souls occupying the same space, but one is suppressing the other, or even replaced it, overrid it. Maybe some part of your original soul is still there. Now, I don't even know if this is better in terms of, did your soul get erased or pushed down maybe? Or was it a fusion, a blending? So you're still you. The soul is there, it's just morphed. And maybe that's why they can't correct it, because it's too late. The code is already fused together. It's like trying to reform a sandwich after you already bit into it. And like, could you in theory? Maybe, but it's not really practical. Sometimes quantum immortality goes wrong, and two souls join when they weren't supposed to. That could explain a lot of this, I think. And if that is the case, the good news is that it's extremely rare. Doesn't happen often at all. So the odds of it happening again are very, very minuscule. Now, time for the joke of the day. I was buying new tires for my car. While I was discussing my options, the person down the counter was flustered at the prices she was being offered. To this, she loudly asked, "I put the same ones on my husband's Jeep last year. What happened? Why are they so expensive?" To which I looked over at her and loudly stated, "Inflation." The guys behind the counter laughed. The rest of the room groaned out a chorus of dad joke music that should have been filmed live in front of a studio audience. But I hope that one day I can muster, these dad jokes, I just read them and learn them and incorporate them. But to be able to, on the spot, on the fly, create your own dad joke, that is pristine quality right there. Perfect. Okay, Sansefal 1935. Copenhagen dreams a disappearing store, or so it seems. So I think much like there are space-time portals that occupy the world, especially when you're driving on roads, there must be space-time portals that intersect with other universes as well. So people aren't just zipping over there only in their conscious minds, because they have friends over, they even interact and feel the material there. They truly do go to a different universe, and in this case, all three of you did, I believe. But in that universe, things can be entirely different. And the question is, in my mind, at least this is still just theory, the closer you are to a different parallel universe, the more things are similar. So the universes right on top of us are probably more or less the same, minor details. But then if you jump really far away, you could have massive differences. Entirely different species, different planet structure, etc. Now, somewhere in the middle, you can just have big differences, like a store that is entirely different. Different clothes, doesn't even have a second floor. So I think that's what happened. It's just a space-time anomaly that transitioned you between universes. And I guess it probably was in the same spot. So when you left the store and walked back the same way, then you just intersected it again and were ported back. And it's all seamless. There's no crackling of energy or anything like that to denote it's a portal. No. You don't see it, unless it's at the end or beginning, because we have had examples of portals where there was energy and it was like unstable. My guess is that's either when it's just forming or at the end when it's actually unstable. One or the other. Now time for the joke of the day. I asked the waitress, "Can I ask you a question about the menu, please?" And she slapped me across the face. She said, "The men I please are of no concern to you." Yeah, that'd be rather private. How dare he ask that question? Okay, Sansefal 1936. From the Deck of Dreams to Celestial Beams. Just how you described the night and the absence of light pollution definitely makes me want to get a boat and just sail out into the ocean or a big lake and just experience it. I had experienced something similar with my dad when we went hunting, really far out. The canvas of the stars, the heavens, is magical indeed. If you've never experienced that, being far away from light pollution, boy, you should. Doesn't mean you're gonna see a UFO zigzagging about, but you might, who knows. And yeah, you're entirely right. It couldn't be a meteor, because those travel in straight lines. Same thing with satellites. They follow a determined path in orbit. So, if something is moving in the sky, in such a weird way that defies G-forces as we understand it, conservation of momentum, what else could it be but a UFO? Now, that doesn't mean it's alien. It could be some military experiment that we have hyper-advanced anti-grav technology or something. That's kind of cool, too, to think about. I don't know which one it is, but either way, what you're seeing shouldn't be physically possible, and that's enough to titillate my mind, because, hey, technology can go way beyond what we think it can. That's awesome. Okay, so it's found 1937. From missing 411 to boots on the run. You know, I really do think that sometimes when objects go missing, it is a prank. There's someone up there just saying, okay, we're going to take this obvious item that was put in a place that they know where it was. There's no ambiguity about it. They know the boots were supposed to be there. They weren't. And then way in the distant future, we're just going to put them back there and just mess with their minds. It literally is like a prank show. Maybe there's a TV show, like a reality TV show in the real universe, real world, and pranking us is part of the content. I could see that. Something I'd watch. Now, time for the joke of the day. My wife divorced me when she found out I only had 9 toes. She is lactose intolerant. I get it. I mean, wouldn't have good balance. Couldn't go hiking and stuff, or it'd be difficult. Okay, so it's found 1938. A smash van, then not. What a strange plot. Yeah, so once again we intersect a portal that transmits your body, your soul, everything over to a different universe. One thing is curious though. I speculate that you have to, if you go to a different universe via a portal, then you have to intersect the same portal to go back. But then in that case, when did you intersect that portal to go back? No, that still fits. So you're in your original universe, you see this crash, you carry on, you move forward, and somewhere along the path forward, you intersect this portal. Now you're in a different universe, you pivot back, and you see the van that is, entirely normal and, well, not normal, but has a flat, nothing major. They're fixing it. So similar, but different enough. And then you just go back to your originating destination along the same path, intersect the same portal, and voila, now you're back in the originating universe. The curious thing, though, is if this is true and how it works, that means there are instances where people cross over to different universes, not via quantum immortality, but their whole bodies and everything. And they're stuck there. They never intersect the same portal again to go back because they didn't even realize it happened, and there's no visual indicator of a portal. So maybe that's what's going on. And that could explain doppelganger theory too. Maybe it's not just bad mojo vibes. It's because if you see yourself, you know that physical matter that is ported over here doesn't belong here, has their own quantum signature or whatever you want to call it. That is hyper interesting to me. Yeah, you can cross to different universes in your full body, not just via quantum immortality. Makes sense. It would explain a few things, especially doppelganger theory. But then if that's true, if you see something weird, an anomaly, then try to traverse the exact same path you did before. Unless you want to be in a new universe. I mean, I guess that's kind of fun too. Hell, this explains missing 411 cases as well. Case notes were found in 1939. Driving north with a temporal report. Man, this is just space-time portal theme this week. No doubt about that. You intersect a portal, not to a different universe, just ahead in space-time. Quite a distance. Normally it's like a few miles, but this one was almost an hour worth of traveling. Just like that. Incredible. Outside of that, just drive back. Everything is normal. Maybe whenever this happens, you always are in a new universe, but maybe sometimes it's just the universe right next door. And because it's right next door, there's almost no differences, so you never realize you're in a different universe. Okay, so it's found 1940. Gold by day, UFO by night, peppered with a cosmic fright. I always wanted to go gold panning. Kinda sounds fun. Yeah, in that New England vibe too. I'd be down for that. But that is an interesting observation regarding the UFO, that it wasn't blinking, but simply rotating, and there was a light only on one end, and that's why you saw it. Now, here's a question. If this is an alien craft, would they not have the technology to keep themselves hidden? Why would they shine a bright light from their ship? Presumably they wouldn't have to, right? They'd be able to block that. Just, flip the switch, turn off the light. So if it is alien, either they somehow don't have the technology to shield themselves from being seen in the sky, or they wanted you to see them. I don't know which one would be the case. There are instances of telepathic communication when people see aliens or UFOs in the sky. So maybe they don't care. Maybe they do want you to see it and then they connect. Maybe that's how they can connect. You have to physically attune your mind to seeing them, to open that port, you could say. Now time for the joke of the day. A man returns from the doctor and tells his wife that the doctor has told him he has only 24 hours to live. Given his prognosis, the man asks his wife for sex. Naturally, she agrees, and they make love. About 6 hours later, the husband goes to the wife and says, "Honey, you know I only have 18 hours to live. Could we please do it one more time?" Of course, the wife agrees, and they do it again. Later, as the man gets into bed, he looks at his watch and realizes that he now only has 8 hours left. He touches his wife's shoulder and asks, "Honey, please, just one more time before I die." She says, "Of course, dear," and they make love for the third time. After this session, the wife rolls over and falls asleep. The man, however, worried about his impending death, tosses and turns, until he's down to 4 more hours. He taps his wife, who rouses. "Honey, I only have 4 more hours. Do you think we could..." At this point, the wife sits up and says, "Listen, I have to get up in the morning. You don't." Damn. So brutal. I still have work. I have to carry on with my life, you know. Damn. Okay, so it's from 1941. 5 blocks away was Mike, who vanished that day. Okay, yeah, I'd say guardian angel. Can you say it with me? How crazy is it that people would try to do that to a child? Sometimes we have guardian angels looking out for us. But you know, it probably wasn't a Mike. The guardian angel just said that name, knowing that all the other Mikes were not him. The vessel was not Mike at all. He just gave some random name. Why not? You don't want the vessel you possess to get into trouble. You're just taking it over temporarily to prevent a tragedy. And prevent it he did. +1 for the guardian angel. Amazing. Case on from 1942. Nighttime scene, strangers keen, and a gruesome mien. Okay, this one, I don't know. As you say, you've never seen them. They appeared too old to be in high school. Like people pretending to be younger when they're not. Like in Hollywood. How did they get your address? And how did they even see you when you were hidden in the car? There's so many weird oddities to this one. You can almost fit them in a mundane explanation, but altogether they just don't mesh, and I don't know what would cause this. I don't even know what kind of glitch would cause this either. It's just bizarre. Why return a bloody blanket? Why would anyone want that back? What a weird experience. Okay, so it's from 1943. 2 orders, 2 quips, 21 pilot trips. Hey, this is a cool little story. Could be someone just had a friend and they told them what they said to the barista, and because of that, it was uncommon that they could go back and just do it again. But then it's not really something you can plan. You don't know what the favorite band of the barista is going to be before you go in. So it could just be an extreme coincidence too, or some kind of temporal event, but it was a different person the third time, so I don't know. That's just an oddity, but interesting nevertheless. Also, I have to say, I'm surprised you've never heard, "No, I don't want that. I'm sweet enough already." That kind of sounds like a pickup line, to be honest, and that you haven't heard that in 5 years is shocking, actually. Now time for the joke of the day. I named my daughter after my mother-in-law. Raving psycho will soon be a year old. People don't like their in-laws, but damn. Case file number 1944. City chills, library thrills, and escalating spills. With how you describe this man just being in these places. Almost like a ninja, melding with the shadows. And always being there. It does seem supernatural. But it could just be a weirdo that was stalking you and had nefarious intent. Either way, calling the police was the right move. If it was supernatural or not, that scared him off, so good job on doing that. If it is supernatural, I guess he would return, and in that case, always travel with friends. Yeah, but that's just good advice in general. Okay, so it's from 1945. In a cafe of rock, fate decided to play, and it wouldn't decay. So I do love the idea of multiple past lives where this is a simulation, a kind of game, an MMORPG you could attribute it to. So you die permanently, beyond quantum immortality, you wake up in the real world, and you decide to go again. You load up a different scenario, and perhaps we're all interconnected. It's like Matrix style, where Neo wakes up and there's pods everywhere. But in the real world, hopefully, it's not hyper-advanced AI robots that have enslaved us, but instead we're just there for an afternoon. Like, this is our gaming session for the day. And it's not that unbelievable. I mean, there could be billions of people that are just lazing around, playing this game. I mean, in the future, if we colonize space, we could have trillions upon trillions of people. You know, the planet has a limited amount of capacity, but space is limitless if we can colonize it. So yeah, I could believe that. Makes a lot of sense. If the real world is similar to our own, and probably would be based similar to what we have in, like, we base our video games in this world, in this simulation, based on our reality. Now we add embellishes, we add dragons and stuff and magic, but it's still based core in this world and the systems that govern it. Given all that, okay, maybe you did have past lives, maybe in a different version of the game, a different playthrough. You knew this man, and you were lovers. It's entirely plausible. How cool is that? That it's even plausible at all, logically. That is so cool. Okay, sounds file 1946. A heartfelt quest. A touching tale that left me blessed. So I'd never heard of disc golf. Interesting. You could still say it's coincidence, but I'm not going to. This was maybe their friend, his ghost, his echo, guiding you to find this disc, and then influencing you to return it, sell it. Everything had to align. You had to do that, you had to think that, you had to find it, you had to have the motivation to bring it to sell it at that exact time. On his day, the funeral. And, you know, when they came back after the funeral. Unreal. The timing had to be so pinpoint, like firing a bullet at another bullet. Who's to say, really, but what an incredible story to have and share with other people. Because it's not so supernatural that people will just dismiss it. It's just extraordinary. And people who know, like us, we know. Now time for the joke of the day. I'm reading a horror story in Braille. I can just feel something bad is going to happen. Yes, you can. I always wondered what it would actually feel like reading in Braille. And like in those intense events in a book, are the dots elevated even more so you really get that intensity from reading it? I don't know. Could be interesting if they did that. But maybe it would confuse the blind. I really don't know. Okay, so it's file 1947. A familiar ride, yet my boyfriend's presence could not be denied. So this couldn't be sleepwalking or sleep driving in this case, or any sort of situation where the person in question didn't realize he was doing what he was doing, because you were talking to him as he was engaged with other people in a loud environment. Clearly he wasn't in his car. So given that, what are the possibilities? Well, I think it's probably a multiverse sight kind of deal, where you simply saw your boyfriend in a different reality, a different realm from you. The question then is, why did he stop? Because presumably if he's there, he's also dating you as well, so the same dynamic in that sense. For that, I don't know. Maybe he has a beef with your friend or something? But nothing fits perfectly because of that little anomaly. He shouldn't have kept going. The other possibility, of course, is a doppelganger, but that doesn't explain the car. Doppelgangers are just physical beings, probably copies from a different universe if I had to guess. But they don't come over with their favorite car. Nothing fits perfectly here. It's just like an amalgamation of different glitches. Okay, sounds file 1948. In the blink of an eye, the Christmas mystery that made me sigh. How curious if this was simply sleepwalking, but somehow you took a blanket and your phone with you. It doesn't seem quite right, but I can't rule it out entirely. Sometimes people do weird things when they're sleeping. But if it's not that, what could it possibly be? It wouldn't be DOP because of the object in question being too specific and reappearing upstairs like that. That doesn't make any sense. A ghost prankster? Maybe? Even that's just weird. I mean, I don't really know why this would have happened, and that's the best kind of glitch. Now time for the joke of the day. My wife and I took a 1,000-mile road trip to see our family. My uncle asked us if we took turns driving on the way up. I replied, yeah, it was too hard to get here in a straight line. Case notes from 1949. Driving through time with the vision of my father's old ride. Now this is a good one. And yes, I do believe that you were seeing into the past via a time portal, time vortex, whatever you want to call it. But the key here is that it may not have been your direct past. I think with any time travel to the past, or even just seeing the past, it involves a different parallel universe. That's how you avoid paradoxes. It's not like in Back to the Future where you're going back into your own timeline and affecting the future you came from. Obviously that can create paradoxes, and it wouldn't be some fade out on a picture that you're holding. Although that was a cool effect, so don't worry, I love Back to the Future. I'm just saying, if that was actually the case in reality, it would be instantaneous. The moment you affected anything that would mean that you don't exist, well, everything is different. If that was how time travel worked. But I don't think it is, if it's even possible to go into the past, which I think these portals do play with. Normally it's more into the future, but it makes sense if you could go into the past, it's just a snapshot of reality. Why not? But then the question is, do you remember yourself as a kid seeing yourself in the future? Can you access that memory? That'd be cool. Okay, so it's from 1950. Numerology Shock. 2 books in flock. So this is a classic duplication event, but so highly specific it has to be targeted by whoever's controlling things. And why did they want you to have 2 books? Or maybe it isn't targeted and there's simply some code that's janky in the universe. If this is a simulation, then the amount of code involved in running this simulation would be astronomical. The games we have today can be millions, tens of millions of lines of code. Trying to debug that, there are systems used to make it easier, but even then, one of the funny things that can happen in video gaming is where a developer tries to fix a bug, and they do fix it. But in doing so, inadvertently, it affected systems 20 light years away from where that code was responding to. So somehow, the butterflies flap wings in Argentina and causes a hurricane in Florida. The kind of butterfly effect is even more pronounced in coding, unless your code is basically perfect. And I'm not some master coder, but I understand that concept, so I think it would apply the same way to a simulation that we're in, if we're in one. So a developer might be trying to fix something and inadvertently causes your book to duplicate. How funny is that? Okay, so it's from 1951. Routine to ridiculous. The eyedrop price mystique. Are we in the realm of price discontinuity resulting in some sort of multiverse travel or evidence thereof? Because I think that's what's going on here. You're in a different universe somehow. Quantum immortality or just a classic spacetime portal, and in this universe the prices are all wonky. A simple explanation, but hey, it's not my fault that quantum immortality can explain almost everything. Now time for the joke of the day. Why do white girls hang out in odd numbers? Because they literally can't even. Okay, so it's from 1952. Desert's highway strange display. Signs pointing the wrong way. Alright, this one sent chills into my core, my spine, my soul. Something about it goes beyond the typical space-time portal when you're driving. Seamless, you're just in a different spot. This one turned you around, and of course it's at night. Maybe the isolation of it is what freaks me out so much, just the idea that you're driving along and there's no possible way that you turned around or got lost because it's a straight shot. Somehow, you do manage to be turned around. No chance even remotely of any other explanation besides some sort of anomaly within space itself. Maybe because it's so pronounced as evidence, there's no discounting it at all, and it's all on you, because you didn't have any witnesses with you. Just trying to imagine how I'd feel, and I would feel disturbed, no matter knowing about this stuff or not. Okay, so it's from 1953. August to October. The store's puzzling makeover. So possibly just multiverse sight. Peering into the buffer is pretty extreme, and I don't know if it goes that far. So it might be a multiverse difference, where in that other universe the store is dismantled and removed much earlier than in your originating universe. Case notes are filed in 1954. The barbershop scene, where reality shifts like something unseen. Yeah, and exactly similar to the last story where things are just out of place by your memory because you're seeing into different universes where variations exist. And yes, the manly barbershop. I have never been to a barbershop before. I don't know what that would mean like. You just have the smell of aloe vera, the shaving cream. But yeah, these two stories basically blend together in terms of cause and effect. Now time for the joke of the day. Why you should never date communist girls. Too many red flags. Case notes are found 1955. In the storm's light stood terrors in the night. Okay, this one is so bizarre. You're not seeing a ghost wouldn't cause the water to displace. You're not seeing some weird creature, it was humanoid shaped, it was clearly a human being. Are we dealing with actual stealth technology that can bend light around it and replicate what's in the back in the front? That is theoretically possible. And at night in the dark, you'd really only make it out by the rain, the splashes going in different directions and so on, to shape out the figure, as you describe. Okay, what the hell's going on? If we have that kind of technology, it would be isolated to military uses, right? It wouldn't just be some random Joe on the street that's obviously pretty crazy or maybe high or something. It strikes me not as a glitch but technology, and whoever was doing it was aware that they shouldn't be seen, besides the rain. But then why use it in the rain too? It's almost like someone stole it off a military base and just was having fun. Or if it wasn't technology, someone just glitched out, but they were aware that they weren't visible. And so they were having fun with it while it lasted. Case notes found 1956. Banging lore and Dog's Encore. A Saturday night to explore. Yeah, this one does strike me as familiar. I think there have been at least one or two cases where dogs are seemingly possessed at random. There's no catalyst to it, no prior warning. They just behave very weirdly, and then it never happens again. Tumor? Don't think so. As you describe, it doesn't make sense. They would do it again if it was a tumor. It would just get worse. Over the years, it must be some kind of possession. But then, possession of a weird, mentally deficient dog? The only other thing way out there is the idea that maybe it was a quantum immortality event gone awry. So the soul was being transferred into you, your copy, but it was latching onto the dogs first. I don't know the process exactly. How do you hone in on that specific soul when the transfer happens? But maybe something was wrong with the code and it targeted your dogs first. Could be that, but that's way out there. But it is kind of interesting to think about. Case notes found 1957. From Science to Chi. Heat felt by me. I've never dealt with anything related to Chi and energy like that, the Asian style of things, of thinking about our own spirit as like a spiritual energy source. And it would tie along with how I perceive as spirits or echoes the fragments of our soul left behind, fading out over time because the energy depletes and there's nothing to recharge it. But I certainly would like to be in that same position, where someone is a Chi practitioner, and they can literally make one side of your body feel warmer, without touching you, obviously. If you rub your hands really quick and then touch someone, yeah, obviously it would feel hotter, but assuming they never touched you, or really came that close, or rub their hands together or anything, could you fake it somehow? Have some heated blanket or something heated pad over your hands? But with witnesses around you, obviously they would have seen him doing that. So if it was just him, and just like that, and you're just feeling warm, pretty impressive. And I don't know what would cause that outside of some energy source that is present within all of us. And maybe there is a way to harness it. Really like that idea, for sure. Also speaks to the DBZ inside of me. The idea of using your chi to control, ki blasts or even flying with it. That'd be so cool. Just to know, if you're a girl, every single guy you've ever been with, you've ever spoken to, has thought of going Super Saiyan at some point, or performing a Kamehameha. Probably don't even know what that is, but every single guy has at some point. Ask your boyfriend about it, he'll know. Now time for the joke of the day. My landlord said he wants to talk to me about my high heating bill. I told him my door is always open. Case notes found 1958. The Blue Bikini Girl in Wild Water Swirls. It is an odd place for this to happen, And everything just coalesced perfectly. You're out in the boondocks pretty much, really far from civilization, no cell phone, but you just flagged down this truck that's there. How lucky for everyone involved. This is possibly not a glitch though. Maybe the glitch has happened in the first part where everything just came together perfectly to save this woman. As they're getting close to the hospital, they realize, well, there's nothing too wrong, and going in here is going to be expensive. So maybe something like that happened and they just skedaddled before you realized. There are anomalies, like having no water. The towel was wet, but the truck wasn't. That is odd. It does seem like they were there and then just not. Could they have intersected a space-time portal without the car having intersected it? Maybe not, I don't know. So yeah, maybe they ran off to avoid the bill, or maybe something else took hold of them and they phased out. But I think they're still around. The craziest one is that they were just ghosts, and this was her echo reliving that moment where she did in fact die. That is the one that evokes melancholy, for sure. Okay, so it's found 1959. In a barrack so old was a spirit infinitely cold. Okay, I love how you describe that this entity, this man, this echo, this spirit, just faded out. And you were seeing it. It wasn't like a frame split. No, this being manifested into your reality, into our reality, but then phased out. Maybe he couldn't handle the energy requirement to do so. To phase in, I think, requires a lot of energy. And I don't think spirits break the laws of conservation of energy. They still use it, and there's a finite supply. And converting kinetic, heat, etc., potential gravity, so on, into spiritual energy, whatever you want to call that, maybe it's not so easy. Maybe you can only siphon it from human beings with attached souls. And maybe some spirits don't want to do that. But they still linger around for a while. Okay, so it's found 1960. A dream of loss and my heart's silent cost. Well, I am sorry for your loss, even though he was your ex. It's still, there's a lot of history involved in that. That is just snuffed out. And that's never something you want to hear. But as for the dream, don't feel guilty. This wasn't someone infusing your mind with a sign, I don't think. I think it was your subconscious pulling that information without anyone else's doing. And even if someone fed it to you, some higher guardian angel, there really was nothing you could do. I mean, who would have a dream like that and think, oh yeah, you know, my ex-husband's gonna die? No. There's no logic to that. There's nothing you could have done, even if you had known. Even if you were there right there, you're not a heart surgeon. There can be signs, but ultimately, as much as we care for other people, we are responsible for ourselves, first and foremost. And you know, us men, we do not like going to the hospital, and if we feel something's wrong, we just say, you know, walk it off. Take a good rest. It'll pass. That is just the mindset of most guys, to be honest, so getting him to go back to the hospital, not an easy thing, no. Now time for the joke of the day. What's green, has 4 legs, and could kill you if it fell out of a tree? A pool table. What the hell is it doing in a tree? I don't know, but very accurate. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.